Marvel crosses over with Star Wars, and the Avengers invade. This video is purely for entertainment, and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting, and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201, Joining the Bounty Hunter Guild. Week later. So who's next on the list today? Spall asked. The former clone ARC trooper sat in his tent at the Protector camp, surrounded by many of his closest friends and allies. They were training, sparring, and mentoring the outcasts as usual, while keeping a check on resources and numbers in the wake of their recent plight and sightings. They have experienced a surge in numbers, and planets within the Mandalore system have openly and proudly declared their allegiance to the Protector of Mandalore. The true Mandalorian point. It can be said that due to their increased presence, they have a more vocal voice in the Outer Rim territories, in their work and activities, and they have received multiple requests and meetings from high-ranking individuals from all over the galaxy. This has been going on for some time, doubling in the past week alone. Honestly, he had been exhausted today, with the deluge of messages from factions and individuals across the galaxy looking to curry favor with the Protector. Another guild, Mandalore, Toby said, giving the leader a sympathetic look. Who is it this time? Spall asked, rubbing his nose slightly. The Bondsman Guild, Finn said, looking slightly confused. Spall blinked in surprise. Them again? How many times have contacted them? Us, including this time. That's 15 times in total, Ursaran said. Although this time they seem to have chosen to change their strategy. The Mandalorian looked at Ren with slight wariness. What does this mean? Dax asked the group. The chief agent and organizer himself came along with another agent, Ursa said. Spall rubbed his chin, pondering this little detail, and then nodded. Okay, let them come. They've been waiting on the outskirts of the camp for some time, Ursa said. Wait, what? Finn said. How do they know where to find us? Although they have publicly banished themselves to the Mandalore region, little is known about their camp. The only people who know about their camp are either the new Manda, the Death Watch, whoever they commissioned, or other Mandalorians. Standing in the doorway of the tent was a man in his 20s with a faint smile, and beside him was a burly Mandalorian. He was dressed primarily in blue armor with the traditional mythosaur skull emblem on his right shoulder. His gauntlets were a rusty brown, and he had a cape over his large heavy crossbow blaster. Paz, Dax exclaimed in surprise, standing up from his chair and walking over to greet Mando, who he obviously knew. It's nice to see you again, Dax. Paz took off his helmet, revealing a small mop of black hair, a black mustache and goatee with a white stripe at the bottom. Glad we can start with something more familiar, Mando. The guild agent accompanying Paz announced boisterously. Nice to meet you all. I'm Kalgar. What are you doing here, Kalgar? Toby asked, sounding suspicious. Well, I suppose that should be obvious, shouldn't it? Grief chuckled. I wish to establish a working relationship with your Mandalorian faction. Paz is here to suggest you are preferable to others. Really? Spall stared at Paz with an analytical look. What's your clan? Vizsla. Paz answered immediately, and many people blinked in surprise. Paz Vizsla, Finn said the full name. The same clan the true Mandalorians fought against all those years ago. The ones who led the Death Watch, and who we will no doubt come into conflict with again. Paz just nodded. Exactly the same. Come here. Spare stood up from his seat. Speak to our camp. We are well aware of our current position among your clans. He stood directly in front of the Vizsla clan members. Know that we may kill you where you stand. Paz stared firmly at the clone of Jango Fett and nodded silently. Then, tell me. Spur stared at the tall Mando, searching for any ulterior motives. Why did you come to us? Why should we believe anything you have to say or offer? Because it wasn't him, remember? Griff smoothly inserted himself between Paz and Spall, raising his hands in a friendly manner. Paz is one of my best partners, and, honestly, the best bounty hunter in the guild. Griff said, stepping back and patting the aforementioned Mando on the shoulder. There are only a few who truly surpassed Paz in skill. And they are in between, and they are few and far between. Then, why us? Finn confused asked. Griff scoffed jokingly. Are you kidding me? Why wouldn't I choose you? At the end of the day, no one can beat a Mandalorian bounty hunter. They've been the best for centuries. I mean, Jango Fett's name is still known throughout the Outer Rim. I'm sure it would be good for us to work together. Spall stepped back, a silent gesture for him to continue. I know there's a good chance you can make it on your own, but keep your head above water. It's going to be an uphill battle, isn't it? I know you're all skilled and have access to the resources you need to help yourselves, and Paz is here to more than prove it. Griff patted Wiz's chest plate. Working with us will bring you a steady stream of work and money, which will help you in the long run. Heck, you can even recruit others to your organization, if you feel they're worth your time. The Protector takes both Agent and the other Mando in his sights. He has some good points. And say what you will about the opposing clan member, he comes here with the other Mandalorian. Say, we accept your offer. Ursa said slowly. What exactly are we agreeing to? The work and bounty are one thing, but if we decide to sever ties, we'd rather not be bound by the guild. Point. Griff spoke up. With a large group of Mando's troops tied to us, our numbers will swell, and when you all sever your ties, I'm sure those who come after will increase our guild's numbers. The Protectors were silent and looked at each other. Let us at least digest your proposal before we make a decision. You will get a response tomorrow at the latest, Spar said. That's totally understandable. I'll be waiting for your call tomorrow, Griff said with a smile. Have a nice day. The guild representative quickly left the room, followed closely by Paz, who only exchanged one last glance with Spall. As both guild members walked out, the other Mandalorians looked at each other. What do you think? Finn asked. Should we take him up on his offer? It would be of great benefit to us if we could get more currency inflows, Ulrich Lane said in a pragmatic tone. It would contribute to the accumulation of resources and help us build more ships at this point. Most people have to agree that there are valid points about the necessity of money, not to mention those robot schematics you recently acquired. We'll need more materials for them than the ships you plan to have, Dax pointed out. If we all agree to this, it must be unanimous. Spall spoke up. I may be Mandalore, but least we forget the Codex and the reasons why we choose to stick to the old ways. Are we to ally with the Servant Guild? I agree. We could use them to help train the foundlings, Dax added, and many murmured their agreement. Then we made our decision, Spar said. Chapter 202, Negotiation with Dooku. The next day, Spall and his closest allies came to an agreement with Guild Agent Griff Kalgar, who grinned with pride, feeling accomplished at having been able to bring the Protector into the guild. The higher-ups of the Bounty Hunter Guild would be very grateful for this man's efforts at Concord Dawn. During the negotiations, Paz Vizsla stood by and watched as Kalgar and Spall finalized the agreement. He was not alone, though. Tell me. Finn stood over him, still in his armor, but with his helmet off. Why did you come to us? Why not your clan? Aren't you a Mandalorian? Proud Mandalorian, Paz said. Then, why aren't you with your people? Why not Death Watch? They will only lead us to death and destruction, Paz said, his tone showing how much he believed those words. We had a chance with Jaster Merrill. It was my clan that squandered and killed that chance and resorted to deceit and lies to achieve victory. You could not find a more insulting way to kill a Mandalorian than through those underhanded means. Finn stared at this fellow Mando, who seemed to swell with every word he spoke. I mean to restore my clan to its former glory, Paz said. Back to our days as a clan, when nothing else could stop the darkness. I will do it, here and now. Finn thought about Paz's words in his mind and slightly. Well, if you want to find a place of your own, then you're welcome here. Paz turned to Finn in surprise. You have done us a great favor, and will help the Protectors in both the long and short term. Finn said evenly. Although they have come to us many times, you personally chose to come here for this reason. It is an honorable decision, and I admire it. He held out his hand. Though we have only just met, it is good to know that there are Mandalorians in the galaxy who believe in our ways. Paz straightened his shoulders, grabbed Finn's hand, shook it, and then left the camp and the planet completely. Sometime after Griff Kalgar and his team left, Spall and the other Protectors were preparing for other jobs and missions when they noticed something coming over their long-range scanners. They didn't recognize anyone, and that made them wary. When some of them came outside the main compound, they saw it was a Separatist ship. Is it the Trade Federation or the Techno Union this time? Dax asked, squinting at the oncoming ship. Spall's eyes narrowed. No. It's worse than that. He immediately headed towards the entrance of the camp, where the ship was hovering, motioning for the Mandalorians to be ready for anything. The ship descended, forming a ramp, and the door slid open. As smoke released into the air, several figures dropped down and walked toward the Mandalorian. A male Weequay, a female Mirilan, a Dathomir woman, and Count Dooku, the leader of the Separatist alliance, regarded the Mandalorian leader with a calculating look. "You're not Jango Fett, are you?" Dooku asked knowingly. "Of course not," Spare said. "Jango Fett died on Geonosis. You saw that happen. Now, you're treating yourself like him, let alone behaving like him, which is controversial. Count, is there any meaning to why you are here? Straight to the point." "I understand. I will get right to the point. I want you and your protector to join the Separatist alliance. Why on earth would we go after a Jedi or a Sith?" Spall growled. "If you don't know, I remember everything. It was your Jedi commandos who killed the original, true Mandalorian on Galidron." To say Dooku expected a mention of Galidron was certainly not what he imagined he would encounter when he arrived on the planet. "I have them all," Spare emphasized, poking the side of his temple. "All his memories. Every meeting he ever had, every conversation, every battle, every moment. I remember you, Count Dooku, very vividly." Behind Dooku's companions tensed, slowly reaching for their lightsabers, all the while keeping their eyes on the many Mandalorians who were now beginning to put their hands on their blasters. Dooku narrowed his eyes, staring at one of Jango Fett's millions of clones, who was glaring back at him. "I hope you haven't forgotten, Jedi Knight," Spall said. "We are Mandalorians. That's what you call our master, clone," said the female Mirilan, holding her lightsaber, ready to ignite it. In an instant, nearly dozens of blasters were drawn out and aimed directly at the 4 Force users. "Yes, that's what you're going to do. Play it cool." The Mirilan grew along with her female waiter companion, while the male waiter was more neutral. Spall shook his head in her direction and returned his attention to Dooku. "As I said, we are Mandalorians, Dooku. At the end of the day, we know how to kill Jedi and Sith better than anyone in this galaxy," Spall said, stepping in front of the Count. "We have suffered enough at your hands. The Sith have used us as tools for centuries. The Jedi, in their eternal fear of us, essentially destroyed our homeworld and left millions dead. We will never again fall under the control of the Sith, nor will we ever again go toe to toe with the Jedi. It will take a lot to get us to think this way again." At this point, the tension is palpable, to say the least. The meeting was short, but it escalated to this level in a few minutes. The two sides reached a stalemate and neither backed down. Spall grinned. "I can see it in your eyes. You want to kill me, right here, right now, and you can try." Dooku did not move. "Never. Forget, Jedi. You may kill us all you want, but we will always rise again and swim upstream. That has always been our way, and it will always be our way. This is the path." The Mandalorian Guardians called out, their collective voices echoing across the area. The Sith Lord exhaled to calm himself. "Very good." The Count's eyes locked with a clone Mandalore. "We will make your life much harder for not considering joining the Separatist cause." Spall just snorted and gave a challenging smile. "More like your master's business, Tyrannus," Dooku growled, turning around, his cloak billowing in the wind, as he and his attendants ignored Spall's taunts. "Making our lives harder?" Spar scoffed. "That's when the Mandalorians thrive." The protectors cheered, hissing and laughing at the retreating darkside practitioners, while the two women glanced back with sneers. A moment later, the ship quickly left, with Spur still standing in front of the camp, joined by Finn, Ursa, Toby, and Dax. "We need to increase our security in patrols," Spall said blandly. "No doubt Dooku will send troops to us at some point. We'll be ready." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, Basilisk War Robot. Brehig, huh? Dax stared at the planet they were approaching. Are you sure about this place, Alrich? Alrich chuckled, walked over and nudged Dodo with his shoulder. Yes, Alrich said. Brehig preserves history for our people and has its own set of resources that we can use to build ours. If you mean mass extinction, then yes, Brehig is important, Finn said loudly, walking up to the two men. Oh, yes, our ancestors killed the native species of this world here. Dax said loudly in confusion. Who are they? Unfortunately, not worth remembering, Spall said from the front of the ship as he flew. With them was a task force of a dozen starfighters, led by Spare and Toby. Their goal for Breesig was simple. They wanted to see if the locals would help them set up a makeshift factory to help the Protectors rebuild their ships and weapons. To help restore the Mandalorians' lost power. Alrich and Ursa had several contacts in Breesig, and they talked about several towns and small cities that seemed feasible, although at Ursa's request it would be best to choose a smaller village first in the hope of winning supporters for their faction point while they are. In effect, this is not an attempt to subjugate the people of this planet. They are in the Mandalorian space sector, and therefore fall under the Mandalorian category. The Protector only wishes they would see it that way. After the Mandalorian clans and people split, the Mandalore region was never the same as before, with hundreds, if not thousands, of planets where traditional Mandalorians seemed to have gone extinct or abandoned their homeworlds or returned to an old nomadic way of life. In retrospect, mostly chaos. It was not an easy time for the Mandalorians, but the Protectors were determined to restore them to their former glory. The small fleet of 13 ships eventually sailed towards a small village with about 40 or 50 houses and other buildings that constituted a settlement point. After landing on the east side of the village, the Mandalorian Protectors began to leave their ships, unloading supplies while Spare made arrangements on land. Secure this area, Spall ordered, and half of his troops followed the instructions. Alright, Alrich. You said your men are here, right? Alrich nodded. Yes, Mandalore. He's waiting for us in the village. Spall, Elsh, Finn and several Mandalorian guards began to walk towards the village not far away. After walking a short distance, the Protectors found a strange man standing in front of them with a smile. Spall's eyes widened in complete disbelief at who was standing before him. Took you long enough, the man said with a grin, when he saw Spall. He primarily wears brown stormtrooper armor with varying shades of brown and silver hair, blue eyes, and a light complexion. Carl. Skirita? Finn said in acknowledgement. Oh, you know me. Carl said, shaking his head. Here, I thought I was forgotten. It's hard not to, sir. Spar said with the utmost respect. You helped Jango train the first 6 of our clones on Chennai. It's good to see you again, Spar. Cal said with a smile, walking up to the clone and patting his shoulder. I see, you've done well, carrying the traditions of the Mandalorian and the title of Mandalorian. I'm proud of you, my son. Is this your contact, Alrich? Finn asked, turning to the Mandalorian craftsman and engineer. Yes. Alrich nodded and walked over to Carl. Carl, what do you have to give us? Something you'll all enjoy, Cal said, motioning for them to follow him. They followed the elderly Mando into the village, where they saw many civilians, mainly humans, looking at the Protector in wonder. You'll have to excuse the people who stare at you, Carl said. It's been a while since they've seen many Mandalorians in full armor. Better get used to it then, Finn said, and Carl hummed. Ah, here we are, Carl said as he stood in front of a particularly large square building as members of the Skirita clan walked to the door. The mill may be down, but if Alrich brings in a few more proper help and gets it up and running, it'll be as good as new. Then Carl opens the door to reveal I seeing things? Finn said loudly, quickly removing his helmet to make sure he was seeing things. Yeah, Carl said with a smile as he walked past a giant robot with 6 legs. It had 2 large front paws, while its back 4 legs were much smaller, although it had a tail that seemed to help with balance. The most striking aspect of this large mechanical creature was its face, which seemed to be made entirely of blaster barrels. Basilisk war droids, one of the Mandalorians muttered in disbelief. Where did you find it? Spur asked in awe, walking up to the ancient weapon that had aided the Mandalorians in their ancient war against the galaxy. What I found on my latest excursion, Carl informed. Found a hidden bunker with a few weapons scattered around. This is one of them. It may need some repairs and tuning, but once that's done it'll be as good as new. Have we been too busy chatting? Elsie asked, and walked over to examine the war robot impatiently. Money or work? It's a bit of both, Finn said. More than I can give you, that's for sure. So, it's a good thing we made this deal with the Bondsman Guild, Spall exclaimed. Now we just need to get Dax and the Bondsman Guild together to help with mass production. Carl blinked. I'm sorry, what did you say? Spall gave old Mando a smile. If you had been in more contact with us, then you would be more aware of a discovery I made, Spall said. We recently discovered the lost journal of Kandor Isolde, better known to us as the Protector of Mandalore. Carl's eyes widened in shock. Where on earth did you find it? The mission to Odo itself. What is this? Chapter 204 Death Watch. The Protectors all turned around to see a Mandalorian wearing blue and grey armor. It wasn't regular traditional armor though. No, this armor had a special 3-pronged dread mark on his left shoulder, a traditional jetpack with rockets, and a special hilt placed on the right shoulder. His helmet is also very different from the usual ones, with yellow highlights and markings to indicate their clan. Vizsla, Spall said. Ah, yes, the fake Mandalore. Vizsla took off his helmet, revealing a sneer, sleek blonde hair and dull blue eyes. Huck, who's talking? A savage. Finn retorted. We follow the true path of the Mandalorians, not the barbaric old ways that led to destruction. Vizsla scoffed, then looked to Mando, the oldest person present. Skirita. Vizsla said, placing his free hand over his chest in a sign of respect. Hello, Vizsla. Long time no see, Cal said neutrally. I'm surprised to see you in these parts, after what you've done. What did I do? Vizsla asked in a mocking manner. Oh, let's see, I've got a long list here, Cal asked back. Murder, terrorist attacks, assassination attempts against our own people. Need I go on? I'm afraid you got it the other way around. That'll get us all killed, Spar retorted, raising his blaster. Oh, what are you going to do with that, clone? Kill me? Vizsla scoffed. Don't provoke us, Ulrich shouted, pulling out his blaster pistol. Do not challenge us, Vizsla, Spar announced, pointing his rifle in Vizsla's face. You, especially all of you, should remember that every time the Death Watch challenged a true Mandalorian, they were repulsed. Your kinsman Thor had to resort to lies and subterfuge to defeat Jester and Jango, not to mention giving us a bad name, since we are trying to get things right since the war, Finn added. Vizsla simply glared at the Protector with hatred. Is that how you talk to a Mandalorian? No, this is how we talk to a madman who will lead our people to destruction, Spall said, his weapon humming with energy, indicating that it was now armed. I'm only giving you one chance, Vizsla, Spar warned. Leave now. No bloodshed is required. Vizsla stared at the blaster defiantly before his face transformed into a manic grin. Suddenly, a voice sounded on Spall's wrist, changing everyone present. Chief, we are under attack. Blaster fire and explosions erupted around them from within the village and beyond, setting the Protectors on edge. In panic. More Death Watch members suddenly appeared, flying high into the air with their jetpacks, firing at the Protectors. One was shot down, and the rest fell back into the warehouse, firing on the attacking Death Watch members. Vizsla reached for the hilt on his jetpack and pulled it out, igniting a black lightsaber. He then fired into the air with his jetpack as several members of Death Watch rushed into the room. Secure the basilisk. We can't let it fall into their hands. Protectors, get to the village, Spall ordered. This is the damn Death Watch. We are under attack here. Mandalore, Dax interrupted. We can only send a few. Something is better than nothing, Spar announced, jumping out of his cover and firing at the flying Death Watch members, catching 2 of them. Protectors, move. Keep them away from the basilisk. Leave it to me, Carl said, rushing to a nearby bench where a jetpack, his armor, and weapons were located. Meanwhile, Spare flew out of the warehouse with Finn and the remaining 4 guards to engage the Death Watchers. Mandalore ran straight at prey, the Vizsla raising his darksaber above his head ready to strike. Thanks to the personal training that Cal Skirita and Jango Fett had given him, and his clone brothers on Kamino, Spall's helmet rammed into Prey's stomach, allowing him to run faster. The two fell briefly before engaging in aerial combat. Meanwhile, Finn bravely battled members of the Death Watch, who greatly outnumbered him and his squad, forcing them to resort to strafing tactics, constantly moving in and out of cover. Finn dove behind a wall for cover and was leaning against a house when he heard screaming. Finn's eyes widened and he turned back toward the village to see villagers running around screaming in terror. He gritted his teeth and flew out of the bunker at full speed with his jetpack, flying towards several Death Watch members. He first used his flamethrower to shake them off, then killed them quickly and accurately. Finn turned around and saw a Death Watch member burning down a house, while the occupants inside were running for their lives. A glowing red double-cross symbol as it bends inward. The symbol of Finn's most hated enemy, Saxon. Thaxon turned and looked at his old rival and growled. Finn. The two Mandalorians fired at each other, ducking and rolling out of their opponent's sight. Should have known you'd be with these assholes, Finn shouted, sheathing his blaster rifle and brandishing his pistol. Haha, hypocritical guy. Thaxon shouted. I forgot how annoying your voice is, Finn whispered. Hey, Finn glanced behind him and smiled in relief as he saw his friends Toby and Dax leading about 24 protectors to aid them in the fight. What's taking you so long? Finn called out to them. Oh, you know, Dax said, already shooting at the Death Watch member. They are attacking the villagers in the town, Finn said. Toby, you helped keep the civilians safe and secured this village. The rest of you stay with me. What about me? Dax asked. See that big building? Finn pointed to the warehouse and Dax nodded. There's a Mandalorian in there named Calscarita. With him is a Basilisk Wardroid. Basilisk Battle Road. Yeah, that one. Finn interrupted. Get over there and don't let it fall into the hands of the Death Watch. The last thing we need is for them to get their hands on something like this. Dax simply nodded and activated his jetpack at full speed, taking off towards the warehouse, bouncing around in the battle, which only grew in intensity as more fighters joined in. Finn looks back in time to see Saxon flying towards him, but Mando grabs him by the throat and the two rise into the air to continue fighting. Toby led his escort through the village, shooting at Death Watch members, while calling on the villagers to safety and away from the fighting. Spall was still in a fierce battle with prey, and neither of them let up. Back inside the warehouse, Cal and Dax are facing off against several Death Watch members. They are forced to retreat as they are being outgunned. Dax looked nearby and saw the console connected to what they were here for in the first place. Knowing what he needed to do, he spoke to Cal as he shot down one of their opponents. Cover me, you're crazy, probably. Just need to activate the robot. Don't do that. Cal fired his only rocket at his opponent, wasting his only remaining trump card point. Dax had rushed over to the robot and immediately started fiddling with it. Yes, I totally do, Cal. Dax rambled over the controls and wires, trying to remember how the whole thing worked from what the journal had told him. It's psychic, semi-sentient. Shockwave. Now, Dax tossed one of his Hedron blasters to Cal and continued on with his mission. It has to work, or we'll die. While typing on the controls, Dax will have to quickly input commands and names to determine who is friend and foe, and since all Mandalorians wield their markers, it will be easier for the droid to filter things out. His task was made a little more difficult by having to occasionally dodge blaster fire. Even some of them crashed into the back of the console. You had a sweet time there, kid, Cal exclaimed. It would have been longer if I didn't know what I was doing, Dax yelled, slamming the hatch. Finally, Dax pulled the lever. Sparks flew, and the robot's lights soon lit up. Voices were soon heard in the warehouse, along with a metallic roar. It wobbled slightly, but still moved forward on top of the rider. Dax could only smile as the cables separated, then issue a simple command. Chapter 205 Ding Jilin. Outside the warehouse, the firefight continued, and civilians ran around looking for safety. One particular family ran to the left to avoid the explosions around them. They are coming, the mother said, hugging her frightened son. The father could only look ahead, guiding the one he loved. I know, but we have two BOOM**PARENTS fell from nearby explosions. They picked themselves up and headed for the shelters of their homes, while many of their neighbors fled or dropped dead. They soon arrived home, and the father opened the door to the bunker. The mother looked back and saw several Death Watch members approaching them. The father saw this as well and realized what needed to be done. "Stay here, son. You'll be safe," the father said, putting him in the bunker. "But I'm sorry, but this is for your own good," the boy's mother said as she quickly closed the door. "We love you. Don't ever forget that. Come on, you big bastard." Dax gritted his teeth, trying his best to keep the old war robot steady as it rampaged around the warehouse, firing at any Death Watch member that came into its sight. While it holds together, it's clear that Cole was right. This basilisk needs some serious maintenance. However, despite this, the robot proves to be both effective in terms of firepower and scares the shit out of Mando in Death Watch. They shot at him, albeit hesitantly. No one seemed willing to be on the receiving end of this behemoth. Dax. He looked back at Toby and saw him flying overhead. "What the hell are you doing? Trying to get this overgrown robot to work properly?" Dax yelled, trying to lure the robot away from the house. "What does the diary say? I barely remember it now." "How come you don't remember something like this now, Toby? Now is really not the time." "Both of you shut up." They both saw a Death Watch member fly by, with Finn in hot pursuit. Stopping next to them for a moment. "We have to get these guys out now," Finn said. "They're causing hell throughout the village." "We can do this," Dax said, now rapidly tapping the robot's control panel. If only this would work. The basilisk war robot suddenly reared up on its hind legs and tail, letting out a rumbling roar, then dropped down on its front legs and began charging forward towards a group of Death Watch. They all saw the war robots coming towards them, their eyes nearly popping out of their skulls at what was about to happen. Their brief moment of shock was their undoing, as the warbots blasted them to death, landing on the ground before moving on to their next target. With Spare and Prey leading the charge, Spare kicked Vizsla in the chest, sending him flying through the air. He stood up straight and glared at the clone Mandalorian hatefully. "Vizsla," said Thaxon, over the comms, "we are suffering heavy losses. Half our troops are dead." Vizsla growled beneath his helmet, looking towards Spar, who was hovering in front of him with his arms raised. Reluctantly, he knew what he had to do. There were more pressing matters to attend to in the next few days. Matters concerning their hometown, retreat, searching through the destroyed villages. The protectors are helping to find survivors. So far, there are more dead than alive, which is infuriating. "What's going on?" Toby asked depressedly. "Nothing is sacred to the Death Watch," Spall said in an angry tone. "All they care about is this maddening return to the old ways." "Is that the old way?" said Toby in disgust. Spar remained silent, simply patted Dara on the shoulder, and went to assist his followers in helping the villagers. Finn walked alone among the ruins of the town, helmet under his arm, a sad look on his face. This was an unnecessary battle. So many people died, all because of the damned competition between the Mandalorians. Shaking his head, he continued to trudge between the two, helping those he could. He eventually came across a home and frowned at the sight of a married couple lying at the entrance to the bunker. Going closer, he gently pulled them down and laid them out. As he did so, he heard some muffled cries coming from there. Finn grabbed the door handle and opened the door to see a little boy cowering. The boy was huddled up, wearing a red dress that covered his face. "Hey, it's okay. The fight's over," Finn said softly. The boy jumped at the sound, glanced at Finn, then turned quickly. As Finn started to come in, the boy crawled back in fear. "I'm not here to hurt you, I swear. Please believe me." To emphasize the point, Finn lowered his helmet and threw his blaster away from him, then raised his hands. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you," Finn said with a small smile. The child blinked and faced the Mandalorian. Finn held out his hand for the kid to take, and the boy hesitantly reached out to him. On the ground, a protector came to help move the many bodies for proper burial. He soon saw Finn holding a child in his arms, who was in shock. "Who are you hugging, Finn? An orphan? Foundling, perhaps? Does he have a name?" Before Finn could reply, the boy said weakly, "My name is Dingerin." "There, look," Finn said, letting the child bounce slightly in his arms. The child smiled slightly at the action, which then turned into sadness. Finn blinked and looked at Din's face before looking at what had caught the boy's attention. The married couple he spotted were covering the cellar door where Din was hiding. Finn sighed and put the child down, and the boy walked over to his parents. "Don't worry, Din. We'll give your parents a proper burial," Finn promised, placing a comforting hand on top of the boy's head. Din just sniffled, tears streaming down his cheeks. Finn crouched down without a word and put his arm around Din's shoulders, and the boy followed suit and hugged Finn. "It's okay, kid. I'm coming." On the Spar side he stood with Carl, Toby, and Alric. "How much are our losses?" Spall asked grimly. "Too many, Chief," said Toby, who was more concerned with the fallen villagers than with the protectors. They had lost no more than a dozen or more. However, the people of this settlement hasn't. "It always been like this?" Spall said in a serious tone. Mandalore, Spur, looked back and saw Finn approaching with a little boy in his arms. "Finn." Spur greeted. "Who's that?" "A foundling," Finn answered. "His name is Dingerin. Spall. "Just this is our path," Spur said softly, and Finn tilted his head. The protector nodded and returned to his task. When he was far enough away, Spall answered the call. Boba's holographic form appeared in front of him. Spall blinked in slight surprise. "Hello, kid. Do you need anything?" "I thought about it, Ward. And I have considered your proposal, and then," Boba frowned slightly and lowered his head, then looked up at Spar with a determined expression. "I should go home." "I see," Spall said happily. "When do you think you'll be home?" Young Fett crossed his arms, lost in thought. "I have some things to take care of, but hopefully soon." "That's what I needed to hear, Boba," Spar said with a slight smile. "We'll wait for your call." Today's victory was bittersweet, in more ways than one. He had acquired several valuable assets. The heirs of Kalanjango were recruited, a planet beneath his feet, and a somewhat intact basilisk war robot. However, there had been too much death here today. Hopefully things would change with the future, so his people could go back to the way they were without all the senseless bloodshed. "Let's pack up," Spare called out. "We should go home." Chapter 206 Black Widow's Child. Natasha sat in the Avengers room within the GD temple with an unreadable expression, her gaze fixed unwaveringly on the growing baby in her lap. "You know, if you keep staring at her like that, I'm afraid you'll bother him." Falcon said as he ate a small meal at his seat. After a moment, the baby gurgled with joy and held out her hands to the former spy, who smiled as he lifted her into the air. Little Mara Jade smiled, making Black Widow smile even wider. "I'm really worried that she might become a copy of you," Falcon said loudly. "What does that mean?" Black Widow asked in disbelief. Falcon snorted loudly and gave a wry smile. "Well, let's see. Your behavior, your attitude, the terrible feeling about you, one more word and you'd start to feel like things were a little off." Mara quickly laughed, causing Black Widow to smile at the toddler. Seeing Falcon leave, Black Widow turned her attention back to the child sitting on her lap. The little one clapped her hands slightly and laughed as she let Natasha poke her little belly while pulling her closer. Mara Jade was giggling now, and Black Widow, with a slightly sly look on her face, began to tickle her mercilessly, causing the toddler to laugh uncontrollably. "You seem to be enjoying it." Black Widow paused in her tickle attack and looked back to see Cap gazing at she lovingly from the front door of the room. She simply shrugged. "I practiced with Clint's kids," Black Widow said. Cap just hummed and thought as he walked over to her and sat down next to her. Mara's attention shifted to Cap, and she looked up at him curiously. "Hey, I don't think we've had time to properly meet up," Cap said, offering a hand to Mara, which she immediately grabbed. "I'm Steve Rogers, a friend of Natasha's. And you?" Mara Jade simply scrunched up her face, her tiny hands roaming over the much larger one. "She's happy to see you," Black Widow said, lifting her knees slightly, causing Mara to let out a small laugh. "So, where is the others?" Cap muttered to himself. "Well, just saw Sam. I think Rhodes is over at the base with the clones. Hope and Scott. I think they took the green little guy to the GD in the temple, trying to figure out what he eats. Have they gone to find Yoda?" Black Widow asked, and Captain America shook his head. "He looks busy for now." "Well, what about the others?" "Petros. Over at the Senate building. Cap said with a knowing look that Black Widow recognized. That blue lady that caught his eye. Huh, Senator Chuki. He has been very persistent in this regard. Okay, Black Widow said, shaking her head. What about our two closest members? Never seen the kid or Matt? Matt. Captain America repeated with a hint of surprise. Didn't know you two were on a first name basis. Black Widow didn't respond at first. We've met before. Captain America was a little confused now. Really? A long time ago, Black Widow recalled. After everything that happened, a different life, Cap was now beyond curious, but the look in his friend's eyes made him hesitate to ask for more details on the matter. Well, if you're wondering, last time I checked those two guys are in the library. Point in the library. Two native New Yorkers were indeed there. Point. Peter Parker and Matt Murdock sit in the GD library, the latter wearing a headdress, and listen to a verbal recitation of the many laws and rules of the Republic. Spider-Man occasionally looked away from the datapad to see Matt sitting patiently. From his appearance, the teen sometimes wondered if the lawyer had obviously fallen asleep. Are you sure you won't get tired of hearing all this? Spider-Man asked after a moment of silence. I certainly didn't, Parker. This almost reminds me of an audiobook from back home. Spider-Man scratched his cheek. Yeah, but these are supposed to be entertaining, not, I understand what you mean, but what else can you do in my shoes? There is no proper way to read Braille in this galaxy. I don't know it, mind you. So all I can do is listen to whatever is out there. On off and nodding. Spider-Man felt tired after reading for so long today. He stood up and put the datapad back to its place. Returning to his seat, he picked up some things and continued to walk out. Where are you going? Go out where? To see if Ahsoka or Barriss want to go out and play. What? If they don't, then I'll go out on my own. I've been going crazy here so long. Point. Daredevil wanted to object, but he found himself closing his mouth before he could retort. To be honest, even with all the new material he had been reading over the past few weeks, he himself felt a little constrained at the moment. It had been a while since Geonosis and he and most of the Avengers had spent most of their time in the temple. Sure, they went to the city from time to time, but never strayed too far from the entire temple. Hearing Spider-Man go about his business, he considered again whether he should follow the teenager's lead and do something. Not exactly himself, as he was very unfamiliar with the area of Coruscant outside the temple, and the only place he could remotely go was the Senate building, where he could feel like he was in a familiar place, sort of. Daredevil was pretty sure that as an intergalactic lawyer, he was slightly above the pay scale, so to speak. It's one thing to help those in need from his law firm in Hell's Kitchen, but planetary and cosmic disputes are another thing entirely. These thoughts were pushed aside as his senses registered someone walking towards him. Chapter 207. Obi-Wan seeks help. Master Obi-Wan. Daredevil said politely to the GD Master, who was walking from behind on the right. Mr. Murdock. Kenobi greeted him, though a puzzled look appeared on his face. I must ask, how did you know it was me? A flurry of approach. A heartbeat. A smell. Footsteps. Matt removed his headdress and stood to face Obi-Wan. What can I do for you, Master Kenobi? Obi-Wan just smiled. No need to be so formal, Mr. Murdock. Just call me Obi-Wan. If you say so. Then what can I do for you? Just wanted to get to know you when you arrived. Daredevil nodded at the Jeda's excuse for being here. May I ask what you are doing here all alone, Matt? Kenobi asked politely. Learn. Daredevil said bluntly. This is a new galaxy I have entered without knowing it. It is better to be knowledgeable and prepared rather than rushing in with a head full of haste. Obi-Wan nodded approvingly. I have heard some rather interesting things from my men in the 212th, Obi-Wan said. During the Battle of Geonosis, you spoke of something quite astonishing. They told me that you heard the plans of attack during the battle. How did you accomplish such a feat? Daredevil just shrugged. When one loses sight, they gain another perspective. Obi-Wan stroked his beard curiously. So when you went blind, your other senses became heightened? To a degree I never expected. Daredevil said. My sense of smell, hearing, taste, and touch give me all kinds of ways to help take in information, giving me a new vision of everything around me. Sounds like it would be useful. Most of the time, it's an annoyance. Some things just shouldn't be heard. Especially coming from the city that never sleeps. Obi-Wan could already imagine what the Terran meant, and at his rather grim tone, he let things settle. You know, these abilities of yours remind me of the species Miraluka. Daredevil nodded. Yes, I have heard of that comparison. My friend Chirrut mentioned it. Ah, yes, he is a follower of the Force, Kenobi said. I have heard of him. Wasn't he with you to the temple when you were brought from Jeddah? Yes, he was here for a while. However, he had to return to Jeddah with Buzz to continue working there. Daredevil said. I see, Kenobi said. I keep in touch with them from time to time. Daredevil said. After spending so much time with them before meeting the rest of the Avengers, it's not nice to just not talk to them anymore. Understandable. Some of the people I've known throughout my life, I wish I could have reconnected sooner. Kenobi ran a hand through his hair and sighed. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be what I expected. What's bothering you? Well, let's just say I'm reliving a past I thought I'd never get to return to, Kenobi said. Daredevil lowered his head and let his senses take over. He began to notice the beat of Kenobi's heart at the mention of his past, and the underlying tension in his posture over the often familiar tone of his voice. Ah, so what can you tell me about her? Kenobi blinked. Why do you think this past was a woman, and not a man? Mr. Kenobi, I'm a lawyer. Let's just say I'm familiar with what you might be struggling with. Obi-Wan frowned and crossed his arms challengingly. Oh, and what made you think of that? First, I try to eliminate personal subjective factors. Second, sadly, this situation is universally expressed in the same way mainly by the opposite sex. You don't have to be a professional to really figure this out. Third, I can see from the inflection of your voice and the little heartbeat that makes me believe that this past is about a woman. Kenobi was now shifting uncomfortably. He coughed into his hand, cleared his throat, and nodded slightly. Well, when you put it that way, believe me, Obi-Wan, I understand what you're going through. Daredevil said clearly. I've had my own set of relationships that could have been in better terms. Obi-Wan had to try not to voice his current thoughts, not wanting to reveal anything truly personal. That's something I hope it has, in terms of how it's going. Daredevil just nodded in understanding. Where have you been to? Mandalore. Home of the Mandalorians. Mandalorian. Matt muttered. I've heard that word several times. It seems very important. More than you want to know, Kenobi said wearily. Why are you telling me this? Second, wonder that myself. Obi-Wan muttered to himself, crossing his arms for a moment. He thought about what he was going to do. He couldn't deny that he was getting increasingly nervous at the thought of seeing Mandalore again. Because it would mean seeing her again. The Jedi Knight looked at Daredevil, who stood there patiently, and said nothing. But Kenobi couldn't help but feel an unexpected kinship with the blind lawyer arise. Matthew. Obi-Wan began. Will you work with me on this? Matt could only blink in confusion at the request. Why, this is a political approach, and I hope someone can help me, and you are more familiar with this field. Why me and not another politician? In some ways, this situation may require another party or group that is not tied to the Republic. After all, Mandalore has a series of neutral systems. If I bring in a Republic senator to help with this, there might be some hostility, Kenobi said. So come to me, who knows their way around laws, if not exactly galactic government, to offer some insight and counsel. Daredevil surmised. Obi-Wan nodded. There's also the problem that the Avengers have different opinions, and a legal person's perspective might be useful in matters I might have to deal with. Matt Murdock considered the matter for a moment, silently pondering Obi-Wan's words and proposal. He felt that he had missed a lot of information, but the Jedi Master might fill him in on the way. Frankly, he was now tired of sitting in the temple waiting for something to do. It looked like he could finally leave the temple and do something productive today, and possibly in the next few days. Chapter 208. Old Love Satine. Sitting on the spaceship, Daredevil is listening to another series of audiobooks related to Mandalore. These neutral systems don't seem to be so neutral most of the time. Obi-Wan simply nodded. Yes, war forces many unwilling participants to choose sides. Mandalore is no exception. Daredevil doesn't have to look outside the ship to see what the central planet currently looks like. War and a series of circumstances have made the planet essentially uninhabitable. The only way the Mandalorians can live properly here is through one of the many domed cities with controlled environments behind their metal barriers. The two soon reached the docking bay leading to the planet's capital, Dome City, and left their transport ship. Matt stood up from his seat and grabbed a large suitcase that contained the bare necessities he was bringing with him on this trip. A handful of clothes, travel supplies, and a few other items. However, the main costume is underneath the one he wears now. Say what one wants about Tony Stark, but the suit he was given when he accepted the offer to become an Avenger was definitely a step up from the costumes he normally owns. With one click on the chest, his entire suit forms around him. When walking down the ramp, Matt held out his cane to help him. Of course, he basically doesn't need to carry it with him now, but after years of long-term companionship, this habit is hard to get rid of. Not to mention that in recent years, it is better to sell a facade to those around him that he is a person who has not been trained in certain ways. Stepping out of the dropship, Obi-Wan and Matt were met by a guard wearing a helmet that only revealed his eyes. "The Duchess is awaiting your arrival, General Kenobi," the guard said, looking towards Matt. "Who is that?" "Colleagues who help deal with these matters. Matt Murdock, attorney, neutral party." "If you say so," the guard said. "You're not funny. I would never have dreamed of it. Come on." The guard motioned them to the platform that would take them to the palace. "The Duchess of Sardinia awaits you." "I don't want to keep the Duchess waiting." Stepping onto the hovercraft, Matt felt a wind rushing across his face as he and Kenobi spun around the city. He heard everything from faint chatter to hovercars speeding past them. The Terrans had to grab onto a nearby railroad track at one point because one of the transports got too close to them. Soon, he heard the hovercraft's engine slow down, letting he realized that they had finally reached their destination. Coming down the ramp, Matt and Kenobi were quickly escorted to where the Duchess of Satine now lived. After walking through a series of corridors, Matt's senses told him that there were a few people chatting in the next room. Walking into the hall, it is a spacious room with windows on all four sides. On the right is a glass image of a woman with a special headdress next to the corridor. On the left side of the room was a small lounge that jutted out to give a clearer view of the city outside. Obi-Wan and Matt passed the two guards at the entrance and were immediately approached by a middle-aged man with blonde hair and violet eyes. "General Kenobi," the man greeted cordially. "Thank you for meeting with us, Prime Minister Almec." The two quickly shook hands, and Almec soon noticed his fellow GD knight. Then, "Who are you?" "Matt Murdock," the lawyer said. "Let's just say that I'm the lawyer and neutral party here, assisting Master Kenobi with matters concerning Mandalore." Almec nodded in understanding. "Then I welcome both of you as servants of the people, but I'm troubled by the false rumors that have been brought to you both here." The Chancellor led them to the end of the chamber. "Mandalorians will never oppose the Republic. Doing so would make you declare that you may be on the side of the CIs. If not, then hostilities could be brought against your people," the Earthling said. "It would be difficult to keep yourself neutral if that were the case." "I'm aware of this, but this is New Mandalore," Almec said firmly. "Side by side with any faction in this war will only return us to our old destructive warrior ways that resulted in the deaths of millions. We are a changed people. Duchess Sardin values peace more than her own life." "Oh, I know how the Duchess feels," Kenobi commented. "Master Kenobi, Mandalore's violent past is behind us. All of our warriors were exiled to our moon Concordia. They became extinct years ago." "Is that so?" Matt asked. "Prime Minister, on my way here, I heard about a string of Mandalorian factions who are still known as bounty hunters and follow an ancient warrior culture that is not in Concordia as you say. A warrior culture as deeply rooted as yours is not so easy to kill. With me, I met a man who wore Mandalorian armor before the war began," the GD said. "A man named Jango Fett." "Jango Fett is a common bounty hunter. How he got the armor is beyond me." "Jango Fett is the last person who should be called a common bounty hunter. If he were the template used by the Republic's clone army," Matt pointed out. Kenobi looked at Matt, clearly impressed. He had done his homework on the way here. Well, Master Kenobi, Obi-Wan and Matt looked back and saw a woman coming out of a nearby corridor with several people following her. My shining Jedi, once again, sets out to the rescue. Matt didn't really need to try to make out the hint of sarcasm that seeped into the Duchess's tone. She walked to the middle seat, her guards and a man in a robe surrounding her defensively. Matt focused on the man next to him, and he could hear Kenobi's heart skip a beat. Duchess of Sardin, Obi-Wan said cheerfully. After all these years, you are even more beautiful than I remembered. Can we trust you? A person who accuses me of betrayal. Her tone was slightly sharp. This raised suspicion among many of the Mandalorians around the room. I would never accuse you of personal wrongdoing, Duchess, Obi-Wan said honestly. However, a Separatist saboteur recently attacked one of our Republic cruisers. He pulled out a holodisk and played a video of the capture. Mandalorian saboteur. The holographic clip shows a Mandalorian in Beskar armor fighting and dodging blaster volleys before retaliating with firepower of his own. It was clear from the reactions of most people in the room that they certainly weren't expecting this. Their heart rates and physical reactions were important to Matt. You must be mistaken, Almec argued. No Mandalorian would engage in such violence. At least not now. Where is this prisoner? From what I understand, he committed suicide rather than be questioned, Matt told the Prime Minister. If you don't know, Prime Minister, there are Mandalorians out there who have not yielded to this ruling government. They still follow the old ways. I know these commandos have fought in many wars, often against the Jedi, Kenobi said. Just look at the Mandalorian wars 4,000 years ago. Every one of my people is as trustworthy as I am, said the Duchess of Sardinia firmly. That's a pretty bold statement, Duchess, Matt said. Every Mandalorian. Then, Sardin noticed the man and found that his attire was a little unusual. Who are you, Matt? Murdoch. Neutral counsel here to assist Master Kenobi. Satine was now just staring at Matt and Obi-Wan. The man standing next to the Duchess spoke quickly. I know we sound conservative, but obviously, your investigation was ordered because the Senate was anxious to interfere in our affairs. Sardin interrupted the representative. Kenobi's investigation was ordered by his Jedi Council, not the Senate, Matt said. From what I understand, the Jedi Council represents the Republic to some degree, let alone reports to them, Sardin said. This investigation is completely separate from the Republic, Matt said firmly. We have discussed this topic many times. All we want is to clear this up without the Republic interfering with your system of neutrality. The attacker may or may not be from your people. It could be someone wearing the ancestral armor of your people to discredit you all. This is not the first time this has happened to any one person and culture. For all intents and purposes, you are innocent in this matter until proven otherwise. To say that Sardin was taken aback by the clarity and simplicity of the man's arguments would be an understatement. It seems that I need to correct my view, Sardin admitted politely. Master Kenobi, Mr. Murdoch, would you two like to tour the city with me? She raised her hand to Obi-Wan and held it there. From the way she was looking at him, it was more about getting him to comply than out of respect. Walking towards the throne, Obi-Wan gently took the hand as he stood up from it. Walking down the steps, they quickly walked out of the meeting room, Matt following behind, not noticing the suspicious look that Prime Minister Almec gave them. Following the Duchess and the GD, Matt was soon taken into the city, walking along a high path with flying machines flying around, and civilians walking around him. Chapter 209 Sudden Explosion. Satine walked side by side with Kenobi, her guards following close behind, and Matt standing between them from behind. It's good to see you again, Obi-Wan, Sardin said seriously. Despite all the circumstances, I'm glad to see that you're doing well. Your peaceful ways have paid off, Kenobi said with a small smile. Mandalore has prospered since I was last here. The Jedi actually saw the opportunity and the difference. His mind briefly flashed a picture of a war-torn world, destruction everywhere. People on both sides were fighting each other, trying to get out alive. Not everyone on Mandalore sees our commitment to peace as a sign of progress, the Duchess said. That's not usually the case, Matt commented. Who usually doesn't like the way you help people? With a tired look, Satine answered. We know of two groups. Some call themselves the Death Watch. I think these are the traitors you're looking for, with such a name. What about the other? Kenobi asked. They call themselves Protectors, Sardin said. They are not necessarily aggressive toward our people. Now who is to say what names you gave us of these groups? Our saboteur could be from any of them. Considering how they call themselves, one could be biased to think this guy is from Death Watch, or could be one of these Protectors. It's possible that their title is a false sign, or someone in their group is behaving irrationally. Sardin just shook his head. Mr. Murdoch, this is not the case with this one. We have met with the Protectors, and they follow the Super Commando Codex written by the previous Mandalore, Jez Temeril. They follow a stricter code, adhering to the old ways of Mandalore. We met with them, and tried to change their ways, but they refused, before sending us back. The Death Watch, on the other hand, worships the violence and warrior ways of the past. It would be easy for Mandalorians like the Indomitable and the Ultimate to become their heroes, waging devastating wars on the galaxy, just to show off the power of the Mandalorians. Is there anything we can do about them? Matt asked. There are some of us, certain officials, working hard to root out these criminals. It is an ongoing investigation, Sartain replied. Obi-Wan quickly assumed a thinking pose, stroking his beard as he took this information in. How widespread is the Death Watch movement? This is barely a movement. This is a small group of hooligans who chose to vandalize public places, that's all. Where is the Protector? Murdoch asked. Satine sighed. That might be a bigger problem than I realize. From what Almec told me, they are more organized, and have a Mandalorian they follow, whom they call the Resurrector, and what about the Death Watch investigation? Hopefully, we'll have them in custody soon. We've tracked them to our satellite Concordia. I hope you are right, Duchess, Kenobi said softly. Matt opened his mouth to ask further questions when he heard footsteps on the sidewalk beside him. He had heard footsteps several times now, and they were accompanied by a scent point at first. He took the man as just another passerby, judging by the way the man walked, and their past pattern of avoiding sight. Who are you? Matt asked himself internally as he focused on his goal. Seeing Obi-Wan and Satine so engrossed, Matt decided to back off a bit, so they wouldn't notice him leaving. After hearing their conversation go into other details, like how they were catching up on old times, Matt realized he could now do his own thing. He slipped away quietly, undetected, waiting for the guards following them to look away, while making sure at least one of them knew why he needed to leave. Matt gave a vague excuse, saying he would catch up, and hoped to rest for a while, until they were completely out of sight and hearing. Matt, suitcase in hand, began walking towards a less populated area, where he then began to quickly climb up a nearby building towards the man who was following them. He was walking behind her now. Yes, this person was her. He was closer to her now. Obi-Wan and the Duchess were not far away on the opposite side. The woman was wearing similar clothing to the civilians of the city, but with a hood covering her face and a large bun on her back. Approaching, Matt used his training to be as cautious as possible. After a while, he was next to the mysterious woman. So, Matt began, causing the woman to suddenly sway. This may seem sudden, but may I have the pleasure of knowing your name? She faced the man with wide eyes, seeming to recognize him. She glanced back briefly at Satine and Kenobi, then back at him. Wasn't he with the attendant, who had followed the Duchess? How on earth did he suddenly appear beside her? It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you, Matt said calmly, walking beside him with his cane in hand. I just want to know why you were following us. Excuse me. Oh, am I being too hostile? Matt said innocently. I apologize. This is a new planet I've never been to, and I'm just starting to meet the locals. Who are you? The woman asked, with a hint of sharpness in her tone. Matt Murdoch, lawyer, representing neutral parties here for the sake of galactic peace. Matt said. Who are you? She was at an impasse when suddenly a huge explosion caught the attention of everyone in the area. In an instant the furtive man suddenly lunged forward, toward the commotion, leaving her standing alone again. She wanted to slip away, but her eyes remained fixed on the smoke rising from where the explosion had just occurred. Her heart and mind were filled with conflicting emotions as she wanted to go there and see if she was still alive, but she knows what she signed up for when she disagreed with the new Mandalorian's pacifist ways. Bo-Katan knows too much. Now, she needs to leave point in the events leading up to the explosion. A guard belongs on the front lines of conflict. Otherwise, he won't be able to do his job, Obi-Wan said as he continued walking with Sabine. He glanced back and saw that Matt was gone, but he figured it was for a good reason. The job of a peacekeeper is to make sure there is no conflict. Yes, a lofty description, not a realistic one, Kenobi countered. Is reality the reason why the Jedi Knights abandon their ideals? Or is it just a response to political convenience? Satine asked challengingly. Kenobi was about to respond when an explosion occurred not far from them, shaking them both and causing many of the citizens to yell in fear. "Ah, you alright?" Obi-Wan asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I am fine. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 210 Heading to Concordia. Sabine broke free of Kenobi and rushed to the explosion site. She saw several people injured and buried under the rubble. Without saying a word, she knelt on the ground and began to help them out of the rubble. Even Kenobi soon joined in with other civilians. Obi-Wan surveyed the destruction and gave his thoughts. There's no way the rogues could have arranged an attack of this magnitude. Then this must have been done by aliens. Kenobi soon spotted the Duchess behind him, a grim look on his face. "Are you sure?" Satine was confused as to what he meant, even more so when she saw the look on his face. Following his gaze, she looked behind her and saw an orange hologram spinning for all to see. The symbol of Death Watch. "This goes far beyond vandalism," Obi-Wan told him sadly. "It is a political statement against your government and you. You are not safe here. I'm taking you back to the palace." When some of Satine's guards arrived, Kenobi handed her over to them before addressing the guards. "I want to interview everyone here. No one is leaving this scene." Out of the corner of his eye, Kenobi saw someone pushing some people aside, and he quickly fled the scene. Without a word, Kenobi took off to catch him. Leaving the garden area, they ran down a flight of stairs and then through a hallway. Eventually, the man Kenobi was chasing came to an enclosed ledge, and he had nowhere to run. "Please, I just want to talk." The man didn't see it that way and pulled out a blaster, firing at the GD. Kenobi dodged, then drew his lightsaber. He blocked and deflected bullets, one of which struck the criminal's weapon. Seeing that the criminal had no other options, he charged directly at Kenobi, but was quickly grabbed and thrown to the ground not far away. "Like I said, I don't want to hurt you." Kenobi soon heard footsteps coming towards them. He looked back and saw Satine walking towards them. "Stay back." Obi-Wan's misplaced attention gave the escapee the opportunity to flee. He walked to the ledge, stood on the railing, and spoke in another language. Kalhevabrach and Ralshiran. As Kenobi and Sadin heard this, they saw the man fall and land on the floor below. They ran to the ledge and saw that the drop was quite large as spider cracks could be seen around the man and people were looking into the scene. The two quickly made their way to the lower level, passing many civilians as they made their way towards the prone man. Sadin was the first to approach, kneeling towards the man who quickly died from the fall. "Se Solu," he said weakly. "Se Cad, Se Derasimcote. Caddy, Se Normiime." "What is he talking about?" Kenobi asked. Satine didn't answer immediately, but leaned forward and spoke softly to the dying man. "Ki, Caddy Normiime." The man quickly closed his eyes and stopped breathing, so Satine spoke to the GD. "He speaks the dialect they use on Concordia, our satellite. I want to see your satellite. Concordia is a province with its own governor. You will need me to escort you." "That won't be necessary." "Actually, it will. You won't make much progress without me, especially since you were just involved in the death of a Death Watch member." "I didn't kill him," Kenobi said defensively. "I know. That's why I'm still talking to you." "Obi-Wan, the GD Master turned around and saw Matt rushing towards him. "Matt, where have you been?" Kenobi asked. Matt stared at the recently deceased man for a moment, his eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses. "I noticed someone was following us," Matt replied. "As soon as I reached her. A moment later there was an explosion near you." "What happened?" "I will explain it to you on the way back to the palace," Kenobi replied. "We must go to the moon, Concordia." Matt and Obi-Wan were now aboard a Mandalorian transport ship, having left its dock outside of Dome City, and was flying towards the moon of Mandalore. It was a strange feeling for Matt, thinking about the randomness of the interstellar travel he was experiencing, and only recently returning to Earth as a still evolving breakthrough. Being out in the universe was still a little surreal. So what does this Concordia satellite look like? Matt wondered aloud. Isn't Concordia an agricultural settlement? Kenobi looked over to Satine, who had changed out of her fancy clothes for something simpler. "Before our war ended, they turned it into a mining base. The massive mining facilities here almost destroyed our forests. But now they are finally growing back," said Sardin proudly. The transport flew towards a luxurious city and entered the hangar of the largest building. It landed on a ramp, and Sardin, Kenobi, and Matt stood around the coffin of the Mandalorian who had brought his life back to Mandalore, along with 2 guards. Stepping down the gangway, the 3 were quickly greeted by a man with several guards standing behind him. Following behind the newcomers was the coffin of the Death Watcher. "Duchess of Sardinia, you're welcome," the man greeted with a pleasant smile. "Thank you, Governor Vizsla. Please allow me to introduce Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and Matt Murdock representing the GD Council." Governor Vizsla was one of the officials I spoke with. "He has been working to locate members of the Death Watch," Sardin said. "I imagine you've heard the rumors about Satine, about how she led Mandalore to ally with the Separatists," Vizsla said, his voice holding a hint of pain. "My only instruction is to seek the truth," Kenobi said bluntly. Vizsla looked at the coffin as it was being carried away by Sardin's men. "Is this the man who bombed the shrine?" "Yes. He's apparently part of Death Watch." "This is a worrying prospect," Vizsla said to himself. "General, if you'll excuse me, we must take care of the bodies." As Vizsla and his guards left to dispose of the bodies, Kenobi stopped Sardin. "I need a favor from you." "What?" Satine asked. "Please keep Governor Vizsla busy at dinner," Obi-Wan said. "Where are you going?" Satine asked. "Just looking around. I'd like to see one of these mining facilities in person," Kenobi said. "You mean you want to make sure they're still operable?" Sardin said in a more accusatory tone. "I want to make sure they're not." Obi-Wan then pulled out a few receivers and presented them to Matt and Satine. "I want you to wear this so we can stay in touch in case you get into trouble while I'm gone. Matt, I trust you to keep Satine safe." Matt just nodded while Satine shook her head in exasperation. "Remember, you are under my protection here. Please try not to cause problems where none already exist. Think of me as someone who's looking for solutions," Kenobi said as he walked towards a speeder in the hangar. "I have to tell you, I'm against all this," Satine said angrily. "I'd be disappointed if you weren't," Obi-Wan quipped as he flew out of the hangar. Sardin just shook his head again. "It's nice to see that he hasn't changed much since I last saw him," said Sardin in a dry tone. "People rarely do that, Duchess," Matt said. "That's right." Sardin sighed tiredly. "Come on, let's not keep Governor Vizsla waiting any longer." Chapter 211 Abnormal Vizsla. The two walked into the luxurious building, and Satine led Matt down the hallway to the room where Vizsla was waiting for them. Once inside, they saw Vizsla holding a data pad, typing on it. "Forgive me, Duchess. I'm writing a letter of condolence to the family of the deceased and arranging for them to retrieve his body." "Of course, Governor. It will be a good fit. General Kenobi will join us shortly," Satine told Vizsla. "He said he needed to meditate," Matt added. "Ah, the ancient GD tradition of meditation," Vizsla chuckled. "Some have taken up this practice in days gone by. I once practiced it myself. Unfortunately, I gave it up due to the demands of the governing government." "Maybe you should give it a try," Matt said. "I've learned to try to do it throughout the day when I need it most. It helps relieve stress once in a while." "Oh, can I ask what you do for a living, Mr. Murdoch?" "I'm a lawyer." Vizsla was laughing out loud now. You have indeed chosen a very stressful job, Mr. Murdoch. I do not envy the job you have to endure. Matt just smiled affably, but as his thoughts raced, he began to notice some unusual hints and gestures from the Vizsla governor. Something was wrong here. He was going to find out what it was. Meanwhile, Master Kenobi, arriving at one of the mining facilities, Obi-Wan walked inside. Passing through the dark tunnels, he soon encountered light. He scanned the area and saw that the place was not abandoned, as he had been led to believe by the lights in the mines. He looked at a nearby wreck and saw that it was also in use, as the Mandalorian armor and weapons were newly crafted. Kenobi looked back toward the center of the mine for a moment, approaching the newly created collection of jetpacks and helmets. He picked one up and examined the familiar T-shaped visor on the Mandalorian's helmet when he heard someone running towards him from behind. Obi-Wan turned in time to see a heavily armed Mandalorian firing at him. The Jedi raised his helmet as a makeshift shield, and the Mandalorian knocked him to the ground. Kenobi quickly stood up and ignited his lightsaber, only to find that his attacker had disappeared. Obi-Wan called out to the Mandalorian as he slowly stepped forward, hoping to avoid a confrontation. I'm on a diplomatic mission under the protection of the Duchess of Sardin. We do not recognize her rule. Mando stood up from his cover and ran towards Obi-Wan, firing at him. As the Mandalorian got closer, Kenobi performed a spinning kick on the man's blaster and knocked it out of his hand. However, moments later, one of Obi-Wan's weapons was shot out of his hand by another Mandalorian standing on an elevated control terminal. Obi-Wan quickly engaged the nearest Mandalorian, unleashing a barrage of attacks, but was overpowered after only a few moments, as two of the Mandalorians grabbed his arms and struck back. As soon as he looked up, he was struck in the face by a boot, knocking him unconscious. Back to Satine and Matt. They both sat at the table and Vizsla poured them both a glass of wine. Alien alcohol. Matt chuckled to himself. This is a first. Someone is feeding false information directly to the Republic Senate that the Death Watch is taking over Mandalore. Who benefits from these lies? Satine asked in a somber tone. Death Watch, of course, Vizsla said, because it was obvious to him. They couldn't have designed this, Satine said. This problem is clearly much bigger than we thought. I suspect some external force helped it. Unbelievable. It must be the man with the highest influence among the Separatists. Separatists? Matt said loudly. Why are the Separatists involved in all this, then? Why are they targeting me? Asked Satine. Vizsla simply smiled in response to her question. Duchess, I'm surprised you don't see it. You lead the Neutral Systems Council. As such, you threaten the Separatists' goals. He raised his glass in her direction. Take it as a compliment. A very powerful person is working for your downfall. They all drank and entered into silence. Governor Vizsla, Matt began. With all due respect, what do you personally know about the Death Watch? Vizsla grunted and wiped his mouth. I know they were a threat from the bombings that occurred on Mandalore, attacking civilians. Nothing but barbarity. I may be proud of our ancient warrior culture and traditions, but the death of innocent people is inexcusable. Matt heard the passion, but didn't feel it. I agree. Matt also said. How much do you know about the Protector? The man's hesitation was so subtle that it was almost imperceptible. Yet Matt felt it all the same. He immediately noticed the change in the man's tone and intonation. I haven't heard of other Mandalorians, the Death Watchers, so close to home. Vizsla said slowly. Only from what I've been able to pick up from time to time. They follow a different set of codes and ethics than the Death Watch and the new Mandalorians. The man rubbed his arm and his brow twitched slightly. Satine didn't notice it, but for someone like Matt, judging from his reaction, that arm, yes, it was bruised. In fact, Governor Vizsla's body seemed to be a little tense now as he paid attention to his breathing and heartbeat. Though it was contained, Matt recognized the breath of a man who had recently been in a fight. He knew the wonders of Bacta technique, but even that didn't always fully heal a man's ego. What? Have you heard, Governor? Matt probed as friendly as possible. I find myself increasingly curious about the number of Mandalorian factions. This is different, Vizsla said, before changing the subject. General Kenobi's meditations take quite a while. What they didn't know was Obi-Wan's current predicament. You know the Jedi They don't do things halfway, Satine said. Chapter 212 Obi-Wan is captured. Without warning, Matt and Satine heard Kenobi's voice through the receiver. Duchess, Matt, please confirm. Can I get you another drink? Visler asked. Yes, of course. I'd rather not. Matt said. I'll save some for dinner. Don't want to start without Obi-Wan. I'm in a bit of an awkward position. I'm being held by the Death Watch. Visler refilled a glass for himself and the Duchess, then turned back with an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Duchess. We're out of ice. I'm sorry to hear that. Sometimes I don't usually use it. Perhaps we should start dinner without General Kenobi. There's a tracking feature on your comlink, Satine. Or, if you want, have Matt accompany you, as he's a better fit. Follow it east to my position. I don't know if I can do that right now. Prey was a little confused by what Satine just said. This is extremely urgent. Duchess, are you feeling unwell? Satine stood up from her seat and smiled. Maybe some fresh air will do me some good. Shall I escort you out? Take the flying car. It's rough terrain. Matt stood up and soon followed the Duchess. I'll go with her. I need some fresh air myself. You? Sure, of course. Matt patted his sunglasses. Sometimes I get migraines. Prey just looked at them with mild confusion as they left the room, and once they had walked a distance they began running towards the hangar. Sadin, you know I can't drive a flying car, Matt announced. I'm blind, not to mention I haven't had time to learn how to operate one of these. Satine wanted to ask how that was possible, since he seemed to be walking around like any normal person, but then put the question aside. Now, Obi-Wan needed their help. After getting on the speeder, she patted the seat behind her. Hold on to me. After getting in the car, he put his arm around her waist. I promise not to do anything. I'll hold you. She wasted no more time and took off. Just as Matt remained mostly silent as the car sped across the Concordia terrain. Because Throne Governor Visler is hiding something from us. What? Satine looked back at him in confusion. Back at the estate, he was guarding his left arm and seemed very tired. He had been in a fight recently. How could you possibly know that? Satine asked, slightly offended. Didn't you say you were blind? I have my ways. Kenobi compared me to Miraluka and understood how I felt about things. Feel something. I'll tell you more later. Here we are. Arriving at the mining facility, Matt and Satine exited their speeder, the former stopping her for a brief moment. Taking off his clothes, Matt revealed the black and red vest he wore under his suit, with two red intertwined Ds on the upper right corner. Before her eyes, Satine watched as a black and red metallic suit appeared around the blind man, with a horned helmet around his eyes and nose, leaving only his mouth and chin exposed. Let's go. Daredevil motioned for her to follow him, and the two of them carefully entered the dark tunnel. As they walked in, they heard Obi-Wan's voice again. Satine held onto the wall next to her and spoke into her wrist. Where are you? Listen to the loud metallic clanking. That's going to be a machine that's about to smash me to pieces, he said angrily as clanking sounds were heard in the background. Daredevil clung to the wall next to the Duchess and heard several heartbeats. One was crawling, while the others were calm. We need to get the Death Watch out of the room, Daredevil said. Seeing a panel nearby, Satine began to fiddle with it before activating the alarm. As it went off, Satine and Daredevil saw a pair of Death Watch members rushing past them, and they quickly took cover behind a conveyor belt. As they approached, Matt pounced. He caught them both off guard with a spinning chop, knocking them both to the ground, then delivered a quick jab to the left side of his neck, knocking him down, before flipping and knocking out the other guy. Is it really necessary? Satine asked with a frown. Would you like them to come back when we rescue Obi-Wan? Daredevil said. Sardin's silence gave him the answer. Rushing towards the captured GD, they were quickly dispatched by him. Well, that certainly took you long enough, Kenobi exclaimed from his containment field while being hung upside down. No, we haven't rescued you yet. Yeah. No need to remind me. Be patient. I'm just a little impatient right now. Wow. From the way they talked, Matt felt as if they were arguing like a stubborn married couple. Climbing over to the console, Satine began fiddling with the controls. Now let's see. One of these should work. Satine, turn off the machine. Kenobi said, now more desperate as he got closer and closer to the broken portion of the device. I'm trying. Hurry up, will you stop yelling at her? She's trying as fast as she can. Daredevil growled, feeling his ears ringing slightly from the roar and noise of the machine. So, what are you doing? Kenobi yelled, earning a cold look from the blind hero that made the GD realize his words. I'm sorry, my friend. There. Satine pressed the controls to prevent Obi-Wan from being crushed. Why doesn't he come out? Daredevil asked, seeing that the device was still functioning. We want to rescue him now. Hey, Daredevil turned around and saw the Mandalorian he had knocked out running back. Haha, they recovered faster than I thought. Daredevil said, we'll kill you first, you bastard. The leading Death Watch member yelled, leaning forward to fire a missile, which Daredevil flung away at top speed. The blast still held him in the air, and he fell to the loud ground point. The Death Watch Mandalorians rushed at Daredevil, and the Avengers stood up and kicked the first one in the chest, before blocking the other's fist and slapping it aside. Chapter 213 Daredevil in Battle. Not wanting Obi-Wan to be ground into a pulp, Satine kicked a nearby can into the grinder. As it bounced off the grinder, Obi-Wan was freed from his restraints. He quickly used the can as an impromptu springboard as he quickly kicked the Death Watch member who attempted to attack Daredevil from behind to the ground. Daredevil grabbed the wrist of the man he was fighting, twisted it, and swung him as hard as he could into another unconscious Mando, making sure the man hit the wall helmet first, knocking him out. The three of them quickly reached a nearby elevator and got on. For one who has sworn to peace, you take an unseemly pleasure in the injuries done to others, said the Duchess. For a woman who has taken a vow of non-violence, you don't seem concerned that I might get killed there, the GD said. But you're not. And yet, I still haven't heard the thanks. Well, you certainly haven't changed much. Daredevil remained silent, just observing how anxious the two men were. He smiled slightly and shook his head. What makes you so happy? Satine asked, noticing Daredevil's smirk. Nothing. Daredevil waved his hand. By the way, you're going to want this back. Point. Kenobi blinked and saw Matt pull out his lightsaber. Thank you, Matt, Kenobi said graciously, taking his lightsaber from Matt's hands. How did you get this back? We got it from those two when we came looking for you. Before Obi-Wan could thank him again, the elevator stopped, and the doors opened, revealing another Death Watcher on guard. Point. The Death Watch Mandalorian barely had time to turn around before he saw two fists coming straight at him. A second later, he was on the ground as Kenobi assessed their position. That's not how we got in, he noted, hand hovering near his lightsaber. Obviously, it's back to where we were, Matt interjected. They were standing in front of some kind of camp. A camp full of Death Watch. Look there. It's the GD. One of the members shouted, pointing at them. Obi-Wan quickly ignited his lightsaber, blocking the incoming blaster fire and bouncing it off. Daredevil dodged and moved around as blaster rounds whizzed past him. Kenobi pressed one of the controls, only to find it had no effect. We must stand and fight. Obi-Wan looked at the Duchess. Or in your case, Satine, just stand and hide. Of course you would. Please both of you shut up, Matt cut in irritably. Stop bickering like a pair of exes. We are not, they both said in unison. Of course, Daredevil said dryly as he and Satine took cover behind some rocks, while Obi-Wan continued to deflect blaster rounds. Below, a Mandalorian Death Watch member has 3 yellow markings on his visor, pointing to some nearby Mandus. You 3, stop them. The Death Watch Mandalorian trio activated their jetpacks and fired at the Avengers and GD with them. Obi-Wan is deflecting blaster rounds, but Daredevil has no way of defending himself in that capacity. This by no means means he is defenseless. He pulled out his ballistic and adjusted the tool's composition so that it became a curved boomerang, using the technology on his helmet to specifically target the 3 Death Watch members. Matt rolled out of cover and swung his weapon. The boomerang spun with a slight whistling sound and clipped the Death Watch flyer's jetpack. They both fell to the ground, but quickly stood up and rushed towards the 2. Daredevil rushed forward, dodging blaster fire and tumbling forward. When he reached his nearest target, Daredevil used his legs to kick the man in the chest, delivering a powerful upward blow. He flew into the air and landed hard on the ground. Motionless, Obi-Wan had been blocking blaster beams, sending one back that killed its sender, while another successfully disarmed the Jedi. He ran towards Obi-Wan and tackled him to the ground, then stood up with his blaster raised, ready to kill. There. The Death Watch member glanced back before a rock hit the visor of his helmet, courtesy of Sardin. As she rested, the Death Watch member opened fire on her. Due to the distraction, he was knocked down by Kenobi and then kicked some distance away. Temporarily overwhelmed, Kenobi rushed over to where the Duchess was currently hiding. "I'm fine," she said loudly, clinging to the rock wall. Seeing his men being humiliated by the Jedi and the men pretending to be Devaronians, the Death Watch captain gave the order, "I'll take care of it. You evacuate." Point at his command. The other Death Watch members in the facility quickly made their way to their transport ship, heading for the rendezvous base. "Obi-Wan," Daredevil called out, and the Jedi looked up at the Avengers, then back at what he was facing. Seeing that everyone else had left, the leader of the Death Watch led 3 of his men towards the intruder's position. As he approached, he spotted the downed member of the team, who was trying to get back up. Pulling out his pistol, the leader said only one word: "Failure." In a split second, Matt recognized the voice as the leader fired a single shot at the newly dead Death Watch member. It was him. Matt mused in his mind. As he and Obi-Wan both walked out to confront the Death Watch leader and his men, Daredevil spoke to him. "Should have known it was you, Vizsla." Taking off his helmet, the leader revealed himself to Obi-Wan, Matt, and Sardin. "Governor?" Sardin said in complete confusion and disbelief. "For generations, my ancestors have proudly fought as warriors against the Jedi," Vizsla said proudly, then sneered in Sardin's direction. "Now that woman has tarnished the Mandalorian name. Defend her if you wish." "I intend to do so," Obi-Wan said, returning his lightsaber to his hand. Lighting it again, he turned in a circle and settled into his usual Sarisu stance, lightsaber overhead and free hand raised horizontally, index and middle fingers raised toward his opponent. Matt said nothing, but assumed a fighting stance, his billy stick split in two. "Ready?" Vizsla looked at his 2 opponents, before reaching for the hilt on his jetpack and drawing his lightsaber. When the lightsaber was lit, Obi-Wan showed an extremely surprised expression. Not only because Vizsla was holding a Jedi weapon, but also because the lightsaber was completely black. This was something he had never seen in his life, let alone heard of. "This lightsaber was retrieved from your Jedi temple by my ancestors during the fall of the Old Republic, prior to the 7th Battle of Ruuzan. Since then, many a Jedi has fallen upon its blade." Vizsla wielded the weapon and roared at his opponent. "Be prepared to meet your fellow Jedi." "Not today," Kenobi announced. "Matt, stay back. This is my fight." Daredevil obeyed, standing back but ready to intervene if anything went wrong. Chapter 214, Leader of Death Watch. Vizsla gripped the darksaber tightly and leapt high into the air with a battle cry. Obi-Wan turned and raised his lightsaber horizontally above his head, blocking Prey's downward attack. Kenobi pushed him back, leaning back to avoid another swing, ducking from another, and colliding his blade with Vizsla's once more. In a flurry of blows, blue met white. Both combatants dodged incoming attacks when they were unable to block them. At one point, Kenobi caught Vizsla's wrist and leaned back to dodge the man's fist. The Jedi Master dodged the man's darksaber a few more times, turned around, and suddenly pushed with a force, sending the Mandalorian flying through the air. 3 Death Watch members broke Vizsla's fall and grabbed their leader. Getting back on his feet, Prey pushed his men aside and rushed back into the fight. The darksaber spun in the air and fell, and Kenobi dodged the blow. Acting quickly, the Jedi kicked the darksaber out of Vizsla's hand as it slid across the rocky ground. Being unarmed with his prized weapon didn't mean Prey wouldn't put an end to the fight. Approaching, the Mandalorian out and struck his opponent with a single blow. As the Jedi retreated, the Death Watch leader made the breakthrough for the darksaber. Obi-Wan knelt on one knee with Daredevil standing beside him. He waved and Matt reluctantly stood up. Facing his opponent again, the Jedi saw the Mandalorian using his jetpack during the fight and taking to the air. This strategy left Prey open, however. Kenobi quickly took advantage of it, rolling forward and launching himself into the air. As he closed in on Visla in the air, he delivered a swift uppercut to the chin, followed by a left hook. With a force-enhanced spin, he grabbed the governor and spun him around, throwing him toward the other 3 Death Watch members. The darksaber landed hard on the ground between them. Retracting as prey fell to all fours, glaring viciously at the Jedi Master, who stared at him with a focused expression. Prey stood up and pointed directly at them. "Warriors, kill them." Without a word, the 3 Mandalorians fired their missiles. Seeing the missiles coming towards them, Obi-Wan dodged the incoming projectiles. He expected them to explode at some distance behind him. Unfortunately for him, they did not appear to be ordinary missiles, bending in the sky and redirecting towards him and his 2 companions. Without warning, Obi-Wan grabbed Sadine's arm and rushed to the elevator shaft. Soon, he used the Force to pull Daredevil in with them. The 3 quickly fell down the shaft, landing heavily on the ground, despite being unscathed by the fiery debris that fell from behind. Back above, the Death Watch members scanned the destroyed elevator shaft. "Should we go after them, sir?" "No," Visla ordered. "There's no time. But don't worry, we'll catch up with the Duchess soon." Sardin, Obi-Wan, and Matt were covered in soot as they emerged from the mining facility they had been in. They walked toward the parked speeder, and Duchess was the first to speak. "I guess this is where we are now," Sardin said, watching Obi-Wan being helped to his speeder by Daredevil. "How could this happen?" Kenobi asked. "I saved your life." "You saved mine," said Satine. "Yeah, well, mine was the more daring of the 2 rescues. If you 2 are done showing off," Matt cut in, "I'd rather come back and rest after a long day." The Sardinians on Mandalore also need to be notified of this latest development. "We can agree on this point," Kenobi said with a faint smile. Sardin simply stuck out his tongue, looking at the 2 men in obvious amusement, and the 3 of them left the mine. "So, who am I riding with this time?" Matt asked, looking at Satine and Obi-Wan respectively. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Matt Murdock walked with Chancellor Almec, Advisor Tal Merrick, and the Duchess of Sardin toward the Duchess's personal ship at the dock. The docks were bustling with clone troopers, Mandalorian guards, and Senate officials, the latter of whom were present because they hoped to engage in upcoming discussions with the leaders of the neutral systems. "But if Provisla escapes, we won't know how many Death Watch there are," said Tal Merrick, a senator from Kalevala. "It's clear that the Separatists are supporting the Death Watch," Kenobi said. "I don't agree. I told you that I want to stay out of this conflict," said Sardin in a slightly cold tone. "Given the current situation, I'm afraid that's no longer possible." Kenobi said. Satine clenched her fists and nearly growled at Kenobi. "I thought all of you would understand my position on this matter. I would never participate in this war." She left him there, walking toward her ship, Kenobi's head hanging slightly. He felt a hand on his shoulder and looked back to see Matt taking off his helmet and giving him an understanding look. "Thank you, Matt," Obi-Wan said gratefully. "So, I see there's a story here." They both turned around to see Captain Black Widow approaching along with Anakin Skywalker, Captain Rex, and Commander Cody, General, reporting for escort duty. Anakin smiled. "Oh, Anakin. I'm glad to see you," Obi-Wan said with a small smile. "Steve, Natasha, you 2 are welcome to after everything Matt and I have endured." You sound tired," Anakin pointed out. "I'm a little tired of the locals' peaceful ways," Obi-Wan said as he walked with the others, patting Commander Cody as a gesture, and the clone nodded. "For people like us who have the power of action, that's understandable," Captain America commented, earning a wry smile from the others. "So, what happened here?" asked Black Widow. "Do you want the long or short version?" Daredevil introduced the options. "Medium version. How about the lawyer version?" "We'll stay here all day then," Anakin joked as they boarded the ship, which took off moments later, leaving the planet Mandalore. Chapter 215 Quarrel. "I imagine you've been busy on Mandalore," Steve said as he and Matt Murdock stood in the storage room of the Crown, the new Mandalorian ship they were currently aboard. Matt shrugged. "I thought it would get busy, though not to that extent." "Well, when you're dealing with people who are totally into the warrior lifestyle." Natasha didn't finish the sentence, although it was enough. "What can you tell us about this Duchess of Sardinia?" Steve asked, leaning against a large trunk in the ship's storage room. She has her own opinions and beliefs, Matt said bluntly, and isn't afraid to challenge them. A total pacifist. The ones who want to put us out of work, Natasha joked, nudging the mocking Captain America with a smug smile on her face. Then Matt cocked his head to the side. Mr. Skywalker. Natasha and Steve looked towards Anakin, who was walking towards them. You don't have to call me that, Murdoch. Anakin smiled. Just call me Anakin. Matt just nodded in acceptance. What's wrong, Anakin? Steve asked. The boys just reported back to me. Anakin gave a thumbs up to the clone behind him. Let Echo take care of this. The last thing I need is for the Heavy to get at all of us. Steve smiled, knowing full well the Heavy's tendency to charge into battle with gunfire at this point. What really itched him, as people now say, was the shield mark on the Heavy's left shoulder, telling him it would undoubtedly protect him from anything. The group heard several beeps and whistles and looked down at Anakin's personal astromech droid, R2-D2. Yes, continue R2, you can begin your patrol. Anakin said. Come on, the Duchess has requested to meet with us. This should be fun, Black Widow said, walking into the elevator where Kenobi, Rex, and Cody were waiting for them. It's good to have you with us, Steve. Natasha. Kenobi looked them both in the eye. I guess I'm not good enough. I'll take it, Matt said blankly, causing Obi-Wan to smirk at the lawyer for a moment before an idea crossed his mind and he crossed his arms, stroking his beard. Everything alright, Obi-Wan? Steve asked, easily picking up on the Jedi's change in demeanor. You seem worried. Is it about the Duchess? Matt asked, and Obi-Wan's silence almost confirmed it for them. The Duchess couldn't be safer, Anakin assured. Yes, I know, Kenobi said calmly, causing the others to glance exchanges. Then why? Anakin raised an eyebrow. It's alright, the Jedi Master said quickly. It's all in the past. Oh, so you're close to her? Anakin said. I knew her a long time ago, Obi-Wan said. Anakin was confused by his master's reaction, but when he saw the looks on the Avengers' faces, it clicked in an instant. Natasha gave him a mischievous smile, and Steve rolled his eyes amiably. Matt remained silent, listening to the strange noises coming from below, but he couldn't identify them. All these sounds were new to him, and he needed more time to get used to them and to discern what he was hearing. Meanwhile, in the ship's lounge area, the Duchess of Satine sat on a raised platform, looking at the senators in front of her. War cannot be tolerated, said Duchess Mandalore. We have been deceived into thinking we have to be a part of it. I say that the moment we commit to fighting, we have already lost. Tal Merrick, one of Sardine's senators, took a drink from his tray before addressing the Duchess. Excuse me, Your Majesty, are you suggesting that we oppose the war on humanitarian grounds? I oppose it because it is an insult to life itself, Sardine said vehemently. As the designated head of 1500 star systems, I speak on behalf of thousands of worlds who urge me to allow them to remain neutral in this war. However, some might argue that the strongest defense is a swift and decisive offense. Everyone turned to the new Jedi and Avengers who had now entered the room. Obi-Wan walked up the steps, Sadine's eyes locked with him, and he quietly respectfully. You are a master now, aren't you, Master Kenobi? Sadine said calmly. Forgive me for interrupting, Your Highness. I meant no disrespect. Really? Senators, I assume you are familiar with the collection of half-truths and exaggerations known as Obi-Wan Kenobi? Sardine said in a slightly condescending tone. Your Highness is very polite. Kenobi said friendly. You're right. I am. Sardine said gloomily. Anakin and the Avengers glanced back and forth several times between the Duchess and the Jedi Master without realizing it. They could tell that there was something more going on between them. Obi-Wan cleared his throat and gestured to his companions behind him. Allow me to introduce my fellow Jedi, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin stepped forward and bowed slightly. It's a pleasure to meet you, Duchess. Accompanying us are the Avengers Natasha Romanoff, Captain Steve Rogers, and Matt Murdock. I'm already familiar with you, Mr. Murdoch, said Sardine amiably. But as for your colleagues, if I were to judge, these are the Avengers I hear most often. Steve and Natasha exchanged glances. What have you heard about us, Princess? Natasha asked politely. You are different from anything that has come before. You all possess a set of skills and abilities that rival or even exceed those of the Jedi Knights. Sardin curled his lips. Is it true that one of you can enlarge yourself to the size of a building? Scott. Steve named the Avengers she was referring to. Yeah, that's quite something to watch. So this is true? Sardin was obviously interested. Excuse me, what do you do with these amazing abilities? To protect others. Steve said with a determined look in his eyes. We as a team fight battles that no one person could possibly do. We fight so that others don't have to. The other senators gazed at Steve and the other two Avengers with a sense of impressed approval, a sentiment shared to some extent by Satine. What exactly are you fighting to protect people from? Satine asked challengingly. Tyrants, demagogues, crazy gods from other planets intent on conquering our planet, evil super robots who want to end our planet. Natasha said casually. You know, that kind of thing. Sort of like the GD, but different. The others in the room could only stare in mild confusion, save for one Twi'lek senator, who smiled approvingly at the trio. Steve spotted him, recognized the man, and nodded. Anakin hummed silently, but Satine was slightly unresponsive. I remember a time when Jedi Knights were not generals, but peacekeepers. Satine said this more like he was speaking to Obi-Wan. We are protectors, Your Highness. Anakin pointed out. We fight for peace. Satine scoffed softly. What an interesting contradiction. That is not a contradiction. Duchess Sardin, the Twi'lek senator began. I'm all too familiar with the concept myself. Whatever, Cinderella, Satine said with a slight frown. Don't you believe that, if the Jedi are peacekeepers, then why would they resort to war for that belief? Master Skywalker is saying that we are acting on orders from Your Highness to protect you from the Death Watch and Separatists who disagree with your views on neutrality. Kenobi interjected. I asked for no such thing, Sardin said sharply, glaring slightly. That maybe so, but most of your members do. Obi-Wan counterpoint. To say the atmosphere is tense right now would be an understatement. I don't remember you being a person who hides behind excuses. Sardin sneered. I don't remember you being a shirker of responsibility. Kenobi shot back, with a hint of pain in his tone point in an effort to defuse the situation. Cham Syndulla stepped in between the two arguing men. That's enough. We are not here to start a fruitless heated argument. The Duchess of Sardin and General Kenobi have proven that there are two sides to every dilemma. Let's leave it at that, and leave it to the Senate for a vote. I think a lot of people are going to create disharmony, Sardin said, and Cham laughed a lot. You don't know how right you are, Duchess, said Cham. Nevertheless, we must give politicians something to do in their free time. Obi-Wan muttered his opinions to Anakin and the Avengers behind Cham. There are probably two sides to every dilemma, but the Duchess seems to favor only her view. Really? Black Widow said with a wry smile. I can't tell. Chapter 216. The Avengers and -039. Perspective. Meanwhile, down below the storage level, Team Domino and several other clones continued their search, checking on each other and clearing the area. Okay, Blender, Red Eye, go to Zone 6, Echo instructed. 5 and I will go to Zone 2. The two followed the order and walked to a fork in the corridor. I'll go check the south, Red Eye said. Be careful over there, it's getting dark, his clone brother teased. Ah, shut up, Blender. What? They didn't see or hear, with a pair of sharp legs sticking out of a large box. No one heard it except Matt Murdock, who was nervous at the unfamiliar sound. Steve saw this and put a hand on his shoulder. Matt. The lawyer just shook his head. I'll talk to you in a minute. Steve frowned but nodded, letting Matt do what he did best. He looked back and saw his GD friend having another debate with the woman he had apparently been having an affair with. The Republic's military presence is the only reliable defense against the Separatists, Kenobi argued. Even extremists can be reasoned with, said Satine, now rising from his seat. Perhaps, if someone could hear the clanking of their battle droids. Obi-Wan walked over to her position, his expression becoming more irritated. Ah, the irony of a soldier, a dreamer's delusion. Ah, you two done with your quarrel? James said with an amused expression, as did the other Jedi and Avenger in the room. Point, it's not every day that you see a more annoyed Obi-Wan Kenobi. Damn, just need to lock these two in a room. Natasha muttered to Steve and Matt, the former smiling slightly, while the latter gave him a more intense look. Tal Merrick then decided to intervene between the two. Duchess, GD Master, it has been a long journey. I think we could all use a break and refresh our minds. Duchess of Sardin. Matt stepped forward, his hands clenched around his cane, his eyes fixed on the Mandalorian ruler. If I may ask, why are you so adamantly against this war? Against the whole idea of conflict? Satine blinked, realizing she was caught off guard by the sudden question, but she cleared her throat and recovered. When you suffer and witness the horrors that cause so much unnecessary death and chaos, you become disgusted by the idea of war, Satine said, lifting her chin. Believe me when I say this. Steve had spoken now. You have a point, but it's too narrow-minded. Sorry, war is not something that can be so easily categorized, nor is it so simply defined. Steve said in his voice. Sometimes, war is inevitable, and the extremists cannot fight it no matter what. Satine didn't respond, letting Steve continue. Take this Death Watcher who's against you, Steve said. How do you reason with extremists who want to go back to their old ways of using terrorism to make their point? Innocent people are dying because of it. I never wanted this to happen, Sardin retorted. They crossed a line. I understand, but we can still. You cross the line first, Natasha interrupted. You squeeze them, push them to the point of desperation, and in their desperation, they turn to the CIs. I never intended to do anything like this, Sardin said defensively. I only wish for peace. I have seen enough of my people die for our ancient ways. I did not expect them to resort to terrorism against their own people. Terrorism is complicated, Sardin. It's mostly about wanting to have something that their targets can't quite provide, and that makes them violent. Natasha said for their part, they want things to go back to the way they were. A simpler, more familiar time, where they didn't have to be persecuted for their beliefs, so they choose to stay and be seen as warmongering bloodthirsty fools. Satine asked sharply. How could anyone wish to do that to themselves? I don't understand why you can't see that. Excuse me, Duchess, but perhaps you don't fully understand these people either. They are Mandalorians, said Sardin fiercely. Am I not a Mandalorian? Your reaction to the Mandalorians was extreme, to the point where the only planet that recognized your rule was the home planet of Mandalore itself. Matt countered. From what we've learned, only your planet recognizes your government, unlike the rest of your galaxy. But there must be a way without bloodshed. Sardin was not going to waver. Enough sacrifices have been made. Duchess, if I may. Natasha began to walk slowly towards her. You see, a long time ago, I was on a mission in a third world country on Earth with a few agents. We were investigating a local government who were trying to buy the loyalty of tribal leaders by bribing them with gems. Natasha was now standing in the center of the room. But their caravans were often attacked by bandits in the forests of the northern provinces. In order to complete the mission effectively, we had to stop the unrest in order to find the appropriate contacts to help overthrow the leaders of said government. For months, we never encountered anyone trading with the bandits. One day, I saw a child playing with a ruby the size of a large fruit. When I brought it back to the command center, we realized that the bandits were throwing them away. This brought silence to the room. Then, why steal them? Anakin found himself asking at the behest of the group. Oh, because they think it's good sport. Because some people don't seek anything logical, like money, peace, or even compromise. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned with, or negotiated with. Some people just want to watch the world burn. Natasha's eyes were fixed on the Duchess. These people, these Death Watchers, they are not like the bandits I've encountered before. But if you continue down this path, these consequences will come to haunt you one day. The silence that filled the air was palpable, to say the least. Matt Murdock broke the silence by tapping his cane on the ground to get everyone's attention. In life, there are many things that are desirable in themselves. Given the current situation, it would be peace in the galaxy and everyone could be happy. No one would suffer from the problems in life such as famine, poverty, and of course war. Matt sighed and looked at the people around him. But there is a problem here. That conflict must happen in order for everything to move forward, to make life better for everyone. This is a great goal, but it should not be a means to an end. If there is no progress, then everything will stagnate, and no one wants that. But if you try to block such progress, you will encounter serious opposition and threats that you cannot control. You suggesting that the rise of the likes of the Death Watch is the Duchess' fault? Merrick posed. I'll have you know that the Death Watch has been around for a long time, long before the current government that the Republic has acknowledged to this day. Matt just shook his head. I'm saying it's cause and effect. Cause and effect, if you're willing to admit it. Everyone in the room was silent, and the blind lawyer gave his reasons. Cause and effect is a universal concept, and no one can change it. It always happens whenever people start moving forward to achieve their beliefs, ideologies, goals, etc. Death Watch comes to mind now because it creates challenges and incites conflict. Yes, I know conflict breeds disaster, but despite the disaster, people still hope that they can work together to make things better. So, if people want to put an end to this, then what will people learn from all these problems? Not to mention there is no faith in humanity whatsoever. Everyone is fighting their own problems to make themselves better. We can't always rely on this barbaric mentality to make progress. Obi-Wan cuts in unexpectedly. This is more than just barbarity, Kenobi, Steve said politely. It's about the inevitable. What Sardin did, while a sudden noble, was too sudden and radical for people who have been familiar with a single way of thinking for thousands of years. There may be multiple opinions about it, but for centuries I have been told that the Mandalorians are a culture of warriors turned to peace, and pacifism in a sudden and short period of time can only lead to extreme conflict, not compromise. Matt shook his head. Not only that, but a reality without pain, death, or real problems would ultimately bring chaos from the established order. It is an idealized dream that many pursue, but it causes chaos, and everyone wants to change it. It is unnatural and unsettling for any living, breathing being. However, if everyone were to gain immortality so quickly and easily, then they would cease to fulfill their potential altogether. If that happened, everyone would become too dismissive of what was given to them, rendering their lives meaningless. I believe you have not provided them with an adequate method to change their perspectives, to align with your own. From what I have seen so far, you have not provided them with an alternative other than your own. You either stick to your pacifist ways or simply be exiled. Judging from the Mandalorian nomadic culture, this does not present them with much of a challenge or choice. The lounge was quiet, and there was a tense feeling all around. Invited senators digested the recent discussions and considered which paths to carefully tread and what actions to take during their political careers. Even being reminded on these topics made some people uneasy. Satine glared at the Avengers fiercely, silently clasped her hands behind her back, and left the room. Well, it must be something, Anakin said with a wry smile. Where do you get all these ideas from? In my life and what I've been through, one needs to be very discerning, even if it gets into some uncomfortable territory, Matt said flatly. Lawyer. Natasha grinned and rolled her eyes. You certainly know how to put on a show, Obi-Wan said dryly. This has to do with our work, Mr. Kenobi, Matt said, adjusting his tie slightly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Obi-Wan and Satine's Past. During this heated debate, the clones continued to sweep below, and the luxury ship entered hyperspace. The Avengers and Jedi talk in the room Anakin and Obi-Wan shared during this trip. There was a slight awkwardness between them, Obi-Wan being unusually silent, all eyes on him. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Kenobi said loudly. So Natasha started. What's going on between you and Satine? Nothing. Kenobi tried to brush aside his former Padawan sneer. Please, Master, don't avoid this subject, because we know this is unlike you. What is your history with Satine? Obi-Wan didn't respond at first, choosing to remain silent. Your heartbeat spiked there for a moment, Obi-Wan, Matt pointed out, making the Jedi Master tense. Obi-Wan sighed and acquiesced to their request. In my youth, this was an extended mission. Master Qui-Gon and I spent a year on Mandalore protecting the Duchess and her family from the insurgents that threatened her world. They sent bounty hunters after us. We were always on the run, living an itinerant life, never knowing what the next day would bring. He said in a distant tone. Sounds romantic, Anakin quipped, earning a wry look from his master as Natasha and Steve laughed. Matt just smiled. That's it for you, Kenobi said. Well, what's not romantic about that? Natasha asked with a smile. It sounds like a typical cliché romance movie from Earth. The boy's a bodyguard, responsible for protecting the girl. The girl is initially resistant to the boy before they fall in love. Matt again noticed Obi-Wan's heart rate spike, but remained silent. A civil war killed most of Sardin's people, and she abhorred violence. When she returned, she took on the daunting task of rebuilding her homeland alone. Kenobi continued, shrugging off Natasha's comments. Aren't you staying to help her? Steve asked. No. My duty as a Jedi Knight requires me to be elsewhere, Obi-Wan said bluntly. A request. But it's clear you have feelings for her. That must have influenced your decision, Anakin said fiercely. Oh, I see, Obi-Wan said, not denying it at all. I live by the Jedi code. The Jedi Master didn't miss the disapproving look the Avengers shared. Of course. As Master Yoda said, a Jedi must not form an obsession, Anakin said in a rather bitter tone, which did not go unnoticed by the Avengers. Yes, but he usually ignores the undercurrent of regret, Obi-Wan admitted. Why don't you try it? Natasha asked. Why run away? It will only lead to suffering, Kenobi said. The Jedi code states that obsession will only lead to inner conflict within oneself and may lead you down the path of the dark side. Honestly, that sounds contradictory, Steve said, crossing his arms. How can you forbid attachment and yet emphasize compassion and caring? Are compassion and care, after all, not just one individual? Obi-Wan countered. Attachment gets in the way of that concept. Boys, you're lucky Tony isn't here, Natasha said calmly. If he were here, he'd upset the whole order. He'd probably annoy all of you. Sounds like it'll be fun, Anakin said with a grin. Anakin. Kenobi gave him a disapproving look, but the Jedi simply shrugged. What? They have to lighten their load sometimes, Anakin said flatly. All these rules and restrictions can come back to bite us. Something's wrong, Matt said suddenly in a sharp tone. I just heard a clone trooper. His heart completely stopped. What? Anakin said in horror. Are you sure? Steve raised his wrist instead. Captain Rex, Commander Cody. Yes, Captain Rogers? Rex responded. Call all the soldiers in and make sure they are accounted for, Steve ordered. Red eyes. Did you hear that? All they heard was silence. We need to get over there, Obi-Wan said, and as he was about to leave the room, Anakin held out his hand. I'll go, Master. If there's anything dangerous down there, the clones and I can handle it. Mind if I join you? Steve stepped forward to join Anakin, and the Jedi nodded. Natasha, Matt, do you think the two of you can hold down the fort here with Obi-Wan? We'll do our part. Steve and Anakin nodded and left, and Natasha looked to Obi-Wan. What now, Obi-Wan? Now we must do our part to keep the Senator and the Duchess safe, Obi-Wan said, for that was the most obvious thing to do. The group was currently sitting down to dinner when the Jedi Knight and his two companions left to meet the Senator and the Duchess. Cham Sindel sighed to himself as he gazed upon all these luxurious and exquisite foods and compared them with the scraps and rations he had eaten not long ago in Ryloth Point. It's still a jarring experience, to say the least, for the Twi'lek war hero, who's more accustomed to fighting for his people on the battlefield than arguing for them. But he's not here just for himself. He's here for his beloved wife and daughter, to use the influence he's gained to shape the galaxy into a better place. Syndulla, the Twi'lek senator blinked and glanced at Satine, who was looking at him curiously. Is everything okay? Is the food to your liking? Satine asked politely. Cham gave her a slightly nervous smile. Very good, Duchess, Cham admitted. But I'm still not used to this kind of pomp and circumstance. Satine turned around as the door to the restaurant opened, and Obi-Wan walked in with Murdoch and Romanoff. "Excuse me, senators. Our men are investigating the situation below decks. I ask that you wait here until it is resolved." Kenobi notified everyone present, causing some nervousness, but now with the GD and 2 Avengers present, things seem to be under control. Chapter 218 Red Eyes Missing. Captain America and Anakin arrived and saw Rex, Cody, and the other clones gathered in front of the elevator. "Okay, guys. What's up? Any signs of Red Eyes?" Captain America asked. "We're not sure yet, sir," Rex said. "Blender last saw him, but we haven't heard from him since, and we can't find him." R2 began to emit a series of beeps and whistles. "What's wrong, man?" Anakin asked his faithful astromech droid. The robot responded with a flurry of concerned beeps and whines. I know, but I'm here now. Use the scanner. See if there's anything out of place." There was a small compartment on R2's domed head, and as he began to scan the area, a small device that looked like a satellite popped open. They followed the spacesuit, and Cap stared up at the rather dark ceiling. "That's not a bad sign at all," Cap commented, his eyes still open, and Anakin glanced back at him, before turning his gaze upwards a moment later. "Yeah. This lighting is weird, isn't it?" Anakin pointed out. "Gentlemen, both." Steve and Anakin looked forward to see Rex, Cody, and the clones standing in front of a large empty box. "Well, what's going on?" Anakin muttered. "It looks like the contents of this box are missing," Five said loudly. "Or it got up and walked away," Cap said, and Anakin nodded in agreement. "Alright, disperse. I'll contact Obi-Wan," Anakin ordered, raising his wrist communicator. Echo stood next to Cap and noticed his slightly worried expression. "Gentlemen?" Steve didn't respond at first. "Where did Red Eye go?" "That was the last time I saw him, sir." Blender stepped forward at the question. "Then go ahead. Echo, the stooge, join me." Steve leaves with the trio of clones, while Anakin speaks to Obi-Wan. "Anakin, what did you find?" Obi-Wan asked in the dining hall. "There is a large container that was opened, and its contents are missing," Anakin said, looking back at the empty box surrounded by clones. "Steve went with 3 troopers to look for our missing men." Kenobi considered this information for a moment, then nodded. "Remain quiet. I will be with the senators." "Got it," Anakin said, turning to look at the clones. "Rex, 5, you're with me. Cody, split the men into and search them." "Yes, sir," Cody said, directing the clones to do as he was told. Cap, Echo, and Stooge follow Blender to the fork in the road where he and Red Eye parted ways. "This way," Blender said, walking in the direction Red Eye left. The group quickly reached a dead end, though Stuff kicked at something on the ground. He glanced down and saw a blaster rifle. "Found something," said the Joker, picking up the rifle and showing it to the others. "We found our rifles," Echo muttered. "The problem is, where are our missing men?" Steve finished serving the clones when they heard a commotion coming from the direction of Anakin and the other clones. Blaster fire echoing from there. "Let's go," Steve said, and the group ran back from where they came from. They run back in time to see the clones shoot a spider-like robot, which falls over, its red eyes dimming. As they arrive, Blender sees something out of the corner of his eye and shouts in vain as another multi-legged robot appears from above and tackles him to the ground. The clone struggled with the robot, and after a moment it breathed a sigh of relief when Steve grabbed the robot and pulled it off the clone. He threw it away, and the robot flew away to balance itself. "Elevator!" Anakin suddenly shouted, and several heads turned towards the elevator door. There they saw another robot opening the door and quickly climbing up the shaft. "Damn it," Steve said loudly, throwing his shield at the robot that was still here, and active point. Anakin contacted quickly his fellow GD. "Obi-Wan, there are assassin probes down there. One of them has climbed up the elevator. I will leave the others here." Led by Obi-Wan and others, Daredevil begins his proceedings, with Black Widow wielding her electric baton. "Quick, secure the elevator," Kenobi ordered, igniting his lightsaber as the cafeteria door opened. The senator stepped back, and Chain pulled out a blaster pistol he had hidden on his person. The assassin droid entered the room, throwing the guards aside, before sweeping its legs aside from Daredevil's outstretched baton. It tried to get back on its feet when Black Widow quickly stabbed it in the head with her baton, sending a jolt of electricity through it. After a moment, it had a lightsaber embedded in its body and fell down moments later. However, as it landed, more and smaller assassin droids emerged from above its head, all heading straight for the people in the room. Cham was the first to make his move, firing at the many mini-bots crawling around. Black Widow linked her batons together to form an electrified staff, which she swung in a wide arch. Daredevil uses him in a similar manner to his fellow Avengers, knocking out any mini-bots that get remotely close as he defends his fellow senators. Rushing into the dining room, Satine pulled what appeared to be a small blaster from her sleeve. Pulling the trigger, it fired a small bolt of electricity. Once it landed on a droid, many of the mini-droids powered up due to being so close. Seeing this, Obi-Wan noticed the weapon in Duchess's hand point deflecting and slicing through a small swarm of mini-droids. Obi-Wan directed his inquiry to Satine. Do you always carry an inactivator with you? Just because I'm a pacifist doesn't mean I won't defend myself. Now, you sound like a GD. Chapter 219 Traitor. Down below, Anakin, Steve, and the clones were having the same problem, with little spider droids crawling around them. Look, there. Everywhere. Blender grabbed the little droid and threw it, and Anakin cut it in half with his lightsaber. Steve used his shield to slap the little robots aside, grabbing any that jumped on him or climbed on him, and R2 used the animatronics to take out the robots as well. The droids were quickly dealt with and Anakin deactivated his lightsaber. Good job, everyone, Anakin said, looking at R2. You too, buddy. R2 beeps in victory. Assassin robot? How did that monster get into the cabin? Rex asked loudly. There's that empty container. Steve pointed at Anakin, frowning in thought. So, the better question is, who smuggled them aboard? Skywalker asked, point returning to Obi-Wan. He picked up a deactivated droid to examine it, just like those poisonous mites on the keel, remember? How could I forget? I still have the scar, Satine said with a slight smile. Forgive me, Duchess. I remember vividly taking you to safety, Obi-Wan said in a slightly odd tone. I mean the scar I got after you fell, Satine said slyly. Oh, yes. Kenobi muttered. Oh, my god. Can they love each other again? Natasha asked in a dry voice beside Matt. Matt didn't answer, but his increasingly bright smile was enough of an answer. As the mess was being cleaned up in the mess hall, Anakin appeared with a datapad. Obi-Wan saw his former Padawan and walked over to see what was going on and learn why he was here instead of calling him through the risk-arm. His answer did not look good, as the GD General was given the datapad. Reading through the contents, a grim expression appeared on his features. It appears that one of our 4 distinguished senators is a traitor, Anakin said. Obi-Wan simply nodded before he heard a faint voice behind him. He looked back and saw Matt snatch one of the mini droids off the ground before it could escape. It looks like one of our little visitors is still alive. Kenobi then handed the datapad back to him. I have an idea. Go back to the bottom of the ship. Destroy the last of the assassin droids. I'll find out which senator is a traitor. Anakin nodded and quickly returned downstairs, with Natasha joining him to assist in the search. Soon after, the senators quickly sat down around the table. Only Matt and Kenobi were together, and the two looked at each other. You don't want to eat? Cinderella. Eat this. Sadly, luxury food is not for me, Senator Merrick. The Twi'lek senator looked at Satine and saw that she was also eating. Is there something wrong, Duchess? Forgive me, but after what happened, I have no appetite now, Satine said in a suppressed tone. That's to be expected, Matt began, still in his suit. This is a distressing moment. After all, perhaps we'd better give up on dinner and return to our quarters for the rest of our journey to Coruscant, Merrick suggested, preparing to stand. Wait a moment, Senator, Obi-Wan began, holding something hidden under the cloth. I think it would be an honor to dine with such a fine and upright man before I leave. Without a word, Obi-Wan lifted the cloth, revealing the mini droid that Daredevil had captured earlier. Many senators moved around uncomfortably when they saw the robot. You see, here Mr. Murdoch caught this little fellow scampering around the dining hall, Mr. Kenobi said. However, the place where it was found is quite unusual. Turning to the blind lawyer, Matt took over from Obi-Wan's statement. The droids attacked. There was a high level of adrenaline rush. Matt started calmly, slowly walking around the table, while Kenobi did the same on the other side. Everyone's heartbeat quickened, and there was a palpable sense of panic given the suddenness of the attack. He heard the man's heartbeat quicken. All the senators, except one, remained calm. Matt said as Obi-Wan held the mini droid up next to the Rodian senator. Seeing this, Satine stood up from his seat and became angry. This is almost torture. Right now, Matt said soothingly. The situation is completely under our control. Now, where am I? Yes, the senators. He stood behind Cham's seat. One might initially be suspicious of Syndulla, but many factors detract from that idea. His readiness to strike back stems from his time fighting in the war, as well as having no prior relationship with the Duchess or Mandalore until this meeting arranged by the Senate. He walked over to Merrick, just as Obi-Wan turned, and walked over to Satine. However, there was one person in particular who remained relatively calm, while ensuring that he was not attacked by the little robots. Matt was standing directly behind Merrick's chair, and Kenobi was now standing next to the senator, while holding up the trapped mini droid. Strange. Obi-Wan said. It seems that this droid likes you, Senator Merrick. Any reason for that? Merrick's eyes moved rapidly. Is everything alright, Senator? Matt asked in a slightly sarcastic tone. You seem a little bothered right now. After a moment the senator laughed derisively. Really, Mr. Murdoch, you are very clever. Merrick pushed the chair back with all his strength, while simultaneously slapping the contained robot into the air. Daredevil threw the chair aside, but not fast enough to stop Merrick from walking up to the Duchess and wrapping his arms around her neck, while raising a blaster to her head. Chaim tried to get up from his seat, but Merrick shot the Twi'lek senator in the leg, causing him to fall to the ground. Smaller assassin droids dashed about, leaping upon the Rodian senator, but were quickly driven away by Obi-Wan, who looked back to see Merrick backing out of the room with Satine as his hostage. She'll go with me, Merrick said loudly, and the door closed behind him as he left the room. Chapter 220 Hostages. Obi-Wan raised his wrist communicator and he and Matt followed the man. Tal Merrick is a traitor, and he's holding Sardin hostage, Kenobi told Anakin as he and Matt now ran through the halls. This way. Matt led Kenobi to the bow of the ship. Roger that, but I have problems of my own right now, Anakin grunted, slicing through another swarm of smaller assassin droids behind him. Black Widow and Captain America are dealing with an army of micro robots. Cody, Rex, how are you guys doing? Anakin said into his wrist communicator. It's quiet here, sir, Cody reported as he and Rex rounded a corner. Just as he was about to continue walking forward, the clone commander spotted a helmet lying on the ground. Wait a minute, Cody carefully turned his helmet to look inside and saw a small mini droid inside pounce on the commander. Several more mini droids appeared and attacked the two senior clone officers as they swarmed the area. Thankfully, Anakin appears around the corner with R2, and he slashes the mini droid with his lightsaber, shocking Rex and the others. Thank you. The clone captain nodded and said. R2 chirped in appreciation, and the two clones stood up. Well, we found the little ones, Skywalker said. Where's their mother? Never seen it. There was a metallic scream from behind them. Turning, they were too late, for the mother robot leaped out of the darkness and carried Captain Rex to a more open area. It raised its two front legs, ready to knock him down. Rex grabbed the two sharp legs that were about to pierce him and kicked the robot off him. The robot climbed up the wall when a disc was thrown on its legs, splitting them directly. The disc returned to its owner, waiting for the clone captain to take advantage of the opportunity given to him by Cap. Rex jumped on the droid and aimed his blaster at the mini droid's entry point and fired a barrage of bullets directly into it. The assassin droid sparked and its optics soon disappeared. He looked back at the others and nodded with satisfaction, and the others also nodded. That's good. On the bridge of the Crown, a crew of Republic guardsmen were stationed throughout the room, operating the controls via hyperspace and maintaining their trajectory to Coruscant. So far, everything was normal, even if they had been on high alert earlier due to the assassin droids aboard the ship. When the door to the room opened, the people on the spacecraft thought it was the guards coming, or someone else. However, To their surprise, Senator Merrick took the Duchess of Satine hostage. Some of the guards were preparing to react accordingly, but with Merrick's blaster already drawn, it was too sudden for them. He fired quickly and accurately at the guards, before turning his weapon on the unarmed captain. "No please, I beg you." The man was shot in the head and silenced. "Monster. You are a horrible monster," cried Sardin, shocked at the death of the guards and the captain. "Get used to it," Merrick growled. He walked to the center of the control room and started a transmission. "Death Watch Commander." Previsla greeted the Duchess and the Senator by video. "Here comes Tal Merrick." "Senator Merrick, it appears you have completed your mission. Approved for pre-announcement." "Yes, sir. I have the Duchess, but I need your help in getting her away," Merrick said. "The Crown has 2 GD and 3 Avengers. That could pose a problem." "Don't worry, Merrick. Reinforcements are on the way." Prey's tone was ominous. "Our respected Confederate friends have generously provided support of equal ability to those GD Knights and Avengers associated with you. Be prepared to exit hyperspace so they can come." As the transmission ended, Merrick held the Duchess closer to him as he maneuvered the Crown to suddenly exit hyperspace. From there, he signaled the CIs so they could board the ship. They returned with Obi-Wan and Daredevil and encounter Anakin and Black Widow running towards them in the same hall. "Did you find them?" Kenobi asked immediately. "No, but I have soldiers stationed in every escape pod," Anakin said. "Steve is with them, making sure no one gets through." Merrick will try to signal for help to his allies. "We must find him," Kenobi said as they entered the elevator in the hallway. "He's already sent it," Matt said, his hearing having picked up the conversation between Merrick and Prey. "As soon as we leave hyperspace, the enemy will come in." Everyone present was silent as they took the elevator to their destination, until Anakin broke the silence. "Now might not be the time to ask, but you and Satine, forever. I don't see how that has anything to do with the situation at hand," Obi-Wan said in an aggressively defensive manner. Anakin winked and caught Natasha's eye, both of them smiling amusedly. The moment they exited the elevator, they felt the Crown shake shortly after, sounding a loud alarm, signaling to everyone on board that they were under attack. Many clones entered the battle station, rushing through the many corridors to hold off their attackers. "It looks like they're coming," said Natasha. "We'll take care of it, Obi-Wan. You go find your girlfriend," Anakin said, running off with Matt and Natasha. "Yes. No, Anakin, she's not mine." Obi-Wan knew this was pointless and ran to find Satine. Chapter 221, DG again. In one corridor, Mandalorian guards and clone troopers were suppressing a small battalion of super battle droids. Steve led the defense, throwing his shield as the vibranium discs bounced around the hallway and cut through the droids like butter. As the clones and Mandalorian guards behind as he advanced, something suddenly hit one of the guards. A large spindly thing made of nerves. It instantly crushed the guard to death, the limbs retracting into place. "Hello, meatbag," the bounty hunter DG roared. "Oh shit, it's that guy again," Steve muttered. Back off now." Captain Rex fired at the bounty hunter, trying to focus on him, while the others retreated. "Anakin," Steve called him in. "We have a serious problem." "What?" Anakin responded with concern. "DG is on board." "What?" Anakin was completely caught off guard by this little tidbit. "That's great," Natasha said sarcastically. "How on earth are we going to get rid of this guy?" "Captain Rogers, we can't let him run rampant on the ship," Captain Rex shouted. "What do you have in mind?" Steve said, narrowly dodging a large fist that left a sizable dent in the wall he hit. "We need to get him off the ship," Rex said, shooting Draconis in the head, which caught the attention of the giant monster bounty hunter. Steve understood what Rex meant and nodded, throwing his shield at Deathorn. The bounty hunter roared in anger, and Rogers barely avoided these Mannix wings. Move, Steve yelled to the guards and clones, and they ran towards the escape pod. Steve messaged Anakin, Natasha, and Murdoch to meet them there, while trying their best to avoid Draconis attacks at the same time. Once on the bridge, Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber and stared at the senator holding Satine in a tight hold. "Come in, Kenobi. You are expected," Merrick said. "Tal Merrick, you are under arrest," the GD said. Release the Duchess. This was not easy for the GD. For the briefest moment, he thought that Merrick still had a blaster. If Merrick did, then Obi-Wan would have used the Force to pry it from his hands and handled things accordingly. This was not the case, however, as what he had in his hands was not a blaster, but a bomb remote. Well, I took precautions and wired the ship's engines to prevent explosion. I press this remote, and we're all dead. Satine struggled to break free of Merrick's grip, but he was a little too strong for her. Looking at the GD General, she made a request. Obi-Wan, if you had any respect for me, you would not have taken such a risk, risking the lives of so many people. Done. All Obi-Wan could do was watch as Merrick pulled Satine out of the room, then carefully moved backwards, keeping the GD in sight. Not wanting to lose their trail, Kenobi gave chase. Meanwhile, Anakin, the clones, and the Avengers are now all fighting frantically in an enclosed space, trying to get Dracula into an escape pod and throw him overboard. The bounty hunters are rampant, having already killed several Mandalorian guards and a dozen clones. He gave nothing in return, and was only focused on killing all those clones and Mandalorians. That's what the Count promised him when he joined the Sith service. If we don't take him down now, he's going to destroy the ship. Matt stressed, his enhanced hearing picking up the damage this bounty hunter was causing. Ready. The escape pod. Anakin ordered the clone to aim at one of the escape pod's control panels. Steve moved forward and began throwing his shield at Draconis at a rapid pace, bouncing it off the bounty hunter. Natasha was using her own set of blaster pistols, and the other clones joined in. The overwhelming display of power instantly startled Dracula, and that was what Anakin needed to see. Skywalker raised his arms high and stepped forward, feeling the Force coursing through every cell of his body. With a grunt, Anakin unleashed a powerful Force thrust that propelled the bounty hunter directly into the open escape pod. He quickly closed it telekinetically and used the Force one last time to initiate the launch, sending Dracula out and away from the ship. The group slumped down in exhaustion until they heard the sound of blaster fire in the hallway around the corner. Anakin, Steve began. You go find Obi-Wan. We'll take care of this. Anakin simply nodded and ran off to wherever his master might be. While walking through some corridors, Merrick encountered a CIS dropship, which pierced the Crown's hull. As he still stared at Kenobi, the overcoated senator activated his wrist communicator and spoke to his Death Watch allies. My name is Merrick. Stand by to disengage, Merrick said, turning to his hostage. Goodbye, Duchess. Obi-Wan, it looks like I may never see you again. Sadin said with worry in his eyes. I don't know how to say this, but I've loved you since the moment you came to help me all those years ago. Merrick looked at his hostage in confusion, then groaned in exasperation. I don't believe it. Honestly, it was a pretty awkward dilemma as he had no idea how to properly respond to her. Sadin, now is not the time. When he saw her eyes, he was silent. Staring into them, he could see nothing but sadness and love as they pierced straight through him. Memories of their years together flooded through his mind. The happy times, the sad times, and the times they had been together as their affection blossomed into more than just a close friendship. Okay, if you say that, I will leave the GD order still. Sadin felt great joy at hearing the true word coming out of Obi-Wan's mouth. However, that emotion quickly faded as her captor spoke. Chapter 222, Return to Coruscant. That's touching. It really is, the traitor senator scoffed. But it makes me sick, and we really have to leave. Sardin looked at Merrick with an insulting look, and growled at him. You have the romantic soul of a slug, Merrick. With that, she quickly raised her foot, and slammed it hard on his foot with her heel. The force and pressure behind it hit the senator's toes hard, probably breaking them in the process. Ouch. The distraction paid off, giving Satine the chance to break free of her captors. In one fluid motion, she snatched the blaster from Merrick's hands and stood a few feet away, her weapon and Obi-Wan's lightsaber pointed at the coat. Slugs are often stepped on. Merrick looked between the Duchess and the GD and scoffed, holding back the pain. Interesting turn, but even if I don't deliver the Duchess alive to the Separatists, I still win. The moment I leave, I'll hit the remote and blow the crown to pieces. I will not allow it, the Mandalorian leader declared. Merrick saw the Duchess trembling, trying her best to keep the blaster steady in her hands. She seemed to know how to use it, but using it would conflict with her ideals. What will you do? If you shoot me, you'll prove yourself a hypocrite for every pacifist ideal you hold dear. Merrick looked at the Jedi Knight in front of him. And you, Kenobi, you're no stranger to violence. You'll be hailed as a hero by everyone on this ship. Almost everyone. Obi-Wan glanced at it and knew that what Merrick said was true. If he killed Merrick right now, in front of Sabine, he would lose any feelings she had for him. Come on then. Who will strike first and label themselves as a cold-blooded killer? Hearing this, Merrick soon let out a gasp of pain as a lightsaber pierced his chest. He let go of the remote as it fell to the ground. The bomb's button was caught before it connected with the floor and destroyed the crown. Seeing the dead senator fall to the ground, Satine suddenly broke away from her concentration and looked at the blaster in her hand. She quickly threw it aside, her hand still shaking. Kenobi looked at the newcomer and sighed in frustration. Anakin. What? He's going to blow up the ship, Skywalker said nonchalantly, sheathing his lightsaber. As Obi-Wan sheathed his weapon, he looked to Sabine as their eyes met. Silence surrounded them, and they seemed lost in each other's gaze. Seeing this, Anakin had to step away to give the two a little respectful privacy. Obi-Wan, whatever. Satine wanted to say next. She couldn't get it out as a series of footsteps came towards their position. She knew without even looking that reinforcement had come to see if she was alright. General Skywalker, the clone commander said, the last droid has been defeated. Sir Anakin growled in annoyance as the clone nearly ruined a tender moment between his master and the Duchess of Mandalore. Very good, Cody. Obi-Wan and Sabine looked at each other before the Duchess left, not wanting to look at the Jedi anymore. I must return to my foreign affairs. As you say, Duchess. We'll talk about it another time. Her heart ached at hearing Obi-Wan's words as he left. They both had to do what needed to be done now. That was all. Duty comes before love. And this is clearly the tragedy of the star-crossed couple. After a period of cleanup, the mess aboard the Crown was finally dealt with, and the ship eventually made its way back to Coruscant. The trip wasn't quite as expected, with much death and destruction occurring aboard, but in the end all was well, for the most part. The Crown pulled up to their designated platform and lowered the ramp, allowing the many passengers to disembark and head to their intended destinations. They were greeted by Chancellor Palpatine, with an armed guard several meters behind him. Well done, Jedi Master. Obi-Wan bowed politely to the galactic leader. Thank you, Chancellor. Speaker, Skywalker said as the other passengers came out. As the other senators greeted the speaker before leaving, Cham Syndulla stood back for a moment to thank the Jedi and the Avengers before chasing after the other politicians. It wasn't long before Sabine approached Obi-Wan, with many of her guards standing around her. How ironic, meeting again, only to find that we are on opposite sides. Obi-Wan could hear the pain in her voice. She was hiding it well with the exhaustion from what had happened before. All she could do now was to smile a little as she stared at him. The needs of the people are what matters most. They can't be better served to guide their future. The Duchess' smile widened a little at his sincere words. She even smiled a little. Fine words indeed from a thoughtful and determined Jedi. She stared at his face, her smile fading a little. But, what? I'm still not sure. This completely confused Kenobi. Why? What's going on? She reached out a hand and stroked his neatly trimmed beard, making him resist the urge to lean in. It hides your handsome face, Satine. Left, smiling teasingly, as she walked away to catch a transport carrying other politicians. What is going on? Anakin asked, confused. I think Obi-Wan is still trying to deny the spark of love, Natasha said, nudging the Jedi Master, who briefly looked flustered. If only I had a camera right now, Anakin said with a smile, causing Obi-Wan to frown. Anakin chuckled and placed a comforting hand on his master's shoulder. She's a very remarkable woman, he said softly. He glanced at his former Padawan with a wry smile, then sighed after a moment, and nodded in agreement. She is. They watched as the Duchess and her entourage left the platform and entered a transport ship that would take them to the Senate building. Hey guys. After a blink, all heads turned to see Spider-Man swinging towards them, joined by Falcon and Quicksilver, with Quicksilver being grabbed by Falcon's arm. Sam? Steve exclaimed in surprise. What are you doing here? Why? Do you smell so bad? Daredevil wrinkled his nose. Oh. Okay. Spider-Man rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Let's just say we've been busy, and it's been a bit long for later, Anakin said, holding up his hands. Frankly, I think we could all use this time to rest, if you don't mind the suggestion. Agreed. Some Avengers members said. How was the trip? Asked Falcon. We'll tell you on the way. Natasha soon smelled something. It was from the Sokovians. Do you have any perfume, Pietro? Well, perhaps. Chapter 223 Bored Spider-Man. Matt, Captain America and Black Widow are gone for now. Scott and Hope are with Mr. Rhodes, working on their equipment, while they search for. They still haven't decided on a name for the baby, Yoda, who often waddles into their room. Is it Kevin? Or did they go with Dylan? Maybe Jack? Whatever the name, these three are busy. Pietro left earlier. Something about a date. A date. Peter mused in his mind. With an alien. Might as well be Star Trek by now. Ahsoka and Barriss were somewhere in the temple, but he couldn't find them. And Sam was somewhere too. This means that it temporarily allows Peter to do exactly what he wants. Then what should be done? Young Spider-Man perched high above the GD temple, overlooking the entrance to the grand structure. In front of him was the city planet that the Avengers had called their temporary home since arriving here. He was in costume, with a mask in his hands. Are they in the Milky Way, or somewhere else entirely? Another galaxy, or another universe? The idea of the multiverse is certainly something that intrigues him greatly, as it does terrifying him. In theory, the multiverse is a realm of infinite realities and possibilities, where anything that can happen will happen. Therefore, being in one of them is not something Peter is willing to assume. Not really ready for something like this yet. Peter shook his head, staring at his mask, then put it on his head. He leaped forward and fired a web, flying away at full speed. If he's going to be here for a while, might as well get to know the planet a little better. Sounds like a much better idea than sitting in an emotionless temple. It was a really refreshing feeling to just wander around the buildings on Coruscant, and honestly, he should do it more often. Whenever he was here and not on a battlefield, or searching for other missing Avengers. Hopefully the Prince of Wakanda is alright. Even though their time together was short, the guy used his powers to help him, and Matt tried to keep the powerful criminals that came to New York out of there. Where is he now? Lost somewhere among these many planets. And then there is Wanda Maximoff and Vision, who are still missing. The Avengers have been here for a while now, and there are only a few days left before they can go home for Christmas and New Year. Peter cringed inwardly at the mere thought of it, and put those thoughts to the back of his mind for the moment. Now, he just wanted to hang out for a while, maybe clear his head and maybe get into some trouble to keep himself busy. Spider-Man performed a speeding spin in the air, which of course attracted the attention of all who spotted him, and some pointed him out openly. They were quite surprised to see such a man leaping and weaving among many flying vehicles and ships, while swinging so easily. Some thought he was a GD. Aside from the seemingly effortless grace, fancy moves and it seems like the only plausible idea that he could accomplish such a feat. For Spider-Man, it's as easy as breathing. When he first gained these powers and began swinging the web, it took him some experimentation to correct his mistakes. He landed on a terrace. The civilians were slightly shocked by his sudden appearance, and he stood up and waved to them. Sorry, guys, Peter said sheepishly. Just passing through. Don't worry, I'm with the Avengers. When it comes to the Avengers, some people are curious, some are stunned, and some are confused. It is obvious that the Avengers are beginning to attract more and more attention throughout the galaxy through their actions. Of course, some people don't know them, but over time they will hear the name of the team. Still, it was certainly a surprise to some to witness one of these Avengers walking around on the holographic network. What a strange outfit this guy was wearing. It looked like tight spandex. Spider-Man looked around, ignoring the looks he received until his eyes widened and a smile spread across his face. He chuckled softly and trotted over to a small booth where the owner was serving a few people some of his own original recipes. Hey, Gallon, Peter called out, waving at him. The Twi'lek he had met when he first arrived on the planet jumped at the sound of his name and turned to see a brightly colored figure walking up to his stall. Blinking, a smile began to form on his face as he recognized the man who had saved him a few weeks ago from the damned thugs that had been harassing him for months. Well, isn't that my hero? The Twi'lek said boisterously. How are you doing, Spider-Man? Oh, you know, the usual, Peter said with a shrug. I'm sorry, Kit, but I don't know your definition of normal, the Twi'lek said in a dry tone, making Spider-Man laugh. Right. Glad to see you're doing well, Garen, Spider-Man said, leaning against the food stand. I'm surprised you remember me, to be honest. How could I forget the colorful weirdo who saved my life? Garen asked with an amused snort. It's hard to forget someone like you. Alright, Spider-Man muttered and Garen groaned. What can I do for you, Kit? Garen asked. Feeling a little hungry today. Peter shrugged. Not yet. Just wanted to get out for a while, to be honest. I can imagine. Garen nodded in understanding as he prepared his next order. Saw you on the Helonad recently. You were sent to Geonosis again. Did you see it? It's hard not to. Galen said with a shrug. Everything on the Holonet is news of the war, update after update. Though I hear more and more about these Avengers showing up on the battlefield alongside the Jedi and the clones. The Supreme Chancellor keeps talking about you personally. Oh, I don't know. Peter muttered. What did he say? I don't know, Garen admitted. I didn't really care in the first place. Just hearing your name and all. Okay. Peter nodded. So, is there any new food this time? Now I have the points to pay for it. Garen chuckled. Well, I've been trying a new recipe, if you're willing to try it. Of course. Spider-Man said. Anything is better than some rations I have to eat. The Twi'lek nodded and began to cook for Spider-Man. As time passed, Peter and Garen chatted, telling the former more details about the planet Coruscant. It turned out that the entire planet was a true metropolis, built on layer upon layer, adding cities over and over. When asked about the surface of the planet, all he got was a chuckle, saying that he wasn't sure if Coruscant had any more surface than the thousands of layers of cities. This is certainly surprising, to say the least. He's been so busy learning about the Jedi Order, the history of the galaxy in general, that he hasn't actually had time to learn about the planet he currently resides on with the rest of the Avengers. The thought of there being 5,000 plus level cities on this planet is just crazy to him. What does the bottom look like? These thoughts and conversations dominated his time with Garen and Talia. Here, a familiar voice came from above. After blinking, they both looked up to see none other than the Falcon flying towards them. Hey, Sam, what's up? What's wrong? Where have you been? Falcon asked, crossing his arms in front of him. You know, around. Had to leave the temple at some point. Sam would object to this, but frankly, if he was honest with himself, he had always longed to do the same thing. All this traveling and fighting on other planets wore him out sometimes. Okay, so what the hell are you doing here? Falcon asked, looking towards the Twi'lek vendor. Oh, you know. Peter shrugged, holding up his meal. Just eating local cuisine. HMPH, what's the benefit? Peter turned to Garen, who got the hint, and pulled out another prepared tray of food, handing it to the pilot. As Sam was about to eat, the sirens of Coruscant sounded. The two Avengers looked up and saw several ships speeding past with the Coruscant police, and even 2 large gunships flying behind them. Wow. Peter blinked. That looks serious. Yeah. Sam said slowly. It is true. The older Avenger turned and looked at the younger hero, who he clearly saw was now quite anxious. If it means that much to you, oh, okay, thank you. Without a word, Peter fired a web into the sky. Quickly, he jumped into the air and quickly swung towards where the action was. Sam blinked, then couldn't help but shake his head himself, a grin on his face. Mad kid. He stretched out his arms, folded his wings, and deployed his backpack thrusters to full blast. The Falcon took to the air, chasing Spider-Man at full speed. Sam had to admit, it certainly beats sitting in the temple all day doing nothing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Dating. Earlier in the day, Petro Maximov could say that nothing could leave him speechless. After all, he leads a crazy busy life. From battling giant robots to now appearing on alien worlds, it's safe to say that nothing surprises Quicksilver. Well, I do want to say, Mr. Maximov, I didn't expect you to act so cool. Chucky smiled slightly, a faint blush on his cheeks. For the Sokovian, this was the first time in his life that he had ever worn something so fancy. The galactic equivalent of a very nice earthen suit, if he was going to make a comparison. This was obviously very strange in his life, as all he had worn in the past were various simple civilian clothes. Not his Avengers uniform. The suit he is wearing now was actually a gift he received from Chamsindhala. When the Twi'lek resistance fighter turned senator came to Coruscant, the man needed a new wardrobe to better fit his new position. While the senator could have gone on his own, he decided to drag Petro along to help give him a suit in return for his help to Lelis. Since receiving the suit for the finishing touches, Mrs. Sokko has never worn it again. Well, until now. Petro? Chucky's voice interrupted his thoughts. Quicksilver shook his head, trying to form words in his confusion, and finally blurted out, "I'm sorry. It's just, you look beautiful," Quicksilver said bluntly. Rio's eyes widened, then she blushed, and a smile broke out on her face. After a moment, the short senator gave him a bright smile, walked closer to the Avenger, and hooked her arm around him. Rio Chuchi wore a fitted purple dress with some beautiful seams along the edges. It went over her shoulders and sloped down a little from her neck, front and back. She wore some simple accessories on her wrists. "You talk funny," Chucky said in a cheerful tone, causing Quicksilver to smile guiltily. Quicksilver shrugged and looked up at the obviously decadent yet ultra-luxurious restaurant in front of him. "Oh my, what is this place?" "My dear friend Padme suggested I try this place," Chucky said, walking forward with Quicksilver as their arms were linked. Quicksilver said to himself in his heart that he had a lot of credit now, but even he was not sure if it would be enough to pay for this place. To him, it looked too expensive. The usher at the front saw Chukai, smiled and nodded, motioning for the waiter to follow them to the private box next to the window overlooking the Senate building. After sitting down, the beautiful female senator sighed tiredly. "I admit, I was certainly glad to be out of that stuffy office." Quicksilver laughed. "Stuffy? That office is the size of a two-bedroom apartment." "Well, I was in that room almost every day," Chuchi said. "It did get dull, seeing the same room over and over again with hardly anything interesting happening." Quicksilver couldn't argue with that. "Right. Hope you're not too busy. Besides, the usual Senate meetings, you mean?" "Yes, Mrs." Sokko glanced at the menu and did her best to translate what was in Galactic Basic. He could order the same thing she ate, but he'd probably end up eating something he probably wouldn't even like. It sounded lovely. "I was going to ask, but have your people elected a new chairman?" "Luckily, they have." "That's good. You've been under a lot of pressure lately, taking on these responsibilities." "Yeah, to be honest, I'm counting down the days until the election is over, so I can be properly relieved of these duties to take over from Kaijo." "So who will be this lucky person?" "Baron Papanoda." Rio took a sip of his drink. "He is very respected and will do everything he can to make things better than what Kaijo did." "Good." Quicksilver nodded. "I heard from Sam and Steve about the mission he went on with you and that guy from the chairman. It wasn't a great moment, but it was my first action as a senator to accomplish." Quicksilver hummed thoughtfully. "I don't think I'll ever be a politician. I don't have such an idea. With what you've done over the past few weeks, this shouldn't be that surprising," Chuchi said, her tone showing signs of approval. "Charging into the thick of battle while protecting our Republic's troops and GD. Your actions on Ryloth were also reported. Just don't want to sit back and let this happen, you know. Have dealt with a situation like this once. Don't want to see this happen on an escalated scale." "Yes, you told me about that," Chuchi said, nodding to the waiter who poured her an alcoholic drink. "Is it Sokovia, your hometown?" "It used to be," Quicksilver said, crossing his arms and leaning on the table. "But you already knew that." "Yes." Chukai nodded. "And this Avengers headquarters, what does that place look like?" Before Quicksilver could answer, the waiter came over. "Hello. "Hello," said the Avenger. "Hello," the senator said. "Are you two ready to order?" In fact, they were. They made their request before the waiter left. After the waiter left, Mrs. Socko remembered his date's question and gave his answer there. Avengers. HQ used to be a large commercial building until my sister and I joined the Avengers. Then it moved to this facility in this far-flung warehouse location that Stark's father once owned. Really? Warehouse? I promise you, it's much better than you think, isn't there a better location than this? Quicksilver thought for a moment. I believe Stark planned to redesignate this huge family estate of his into another Avengers base before we got here. The two had a long conversation and dinner as they both told each other more stories about each other's past. Pietro continued to tell her more and more about Earth, while she answered his questions about the galaxy as best she could. They had had many of these conversations by now, with Pietro talking to Chucky whenever he or she was on the planet. Whenever he was away, Pietro made sure to contact her when he believed she needed someone to talk to, and more often than not, that proved to be true. Chucky even jokingly noted that he always seemed to know when to call when she needed someone to cheer her up or brighten her day. She joked that maybe he had developed some GD senses. Pietro was just joking and said it was all natural intuition and instinct. They were eating dessert now, and the two of them had been here for nearly 2 hours. I must say, Pietro. Rio gave him a soft smile. You never know how much you need time like this, but you certainly gave it to me. Wanda taught me that I needed to slow down and not rush through it. I can imagine. Chachi chuckled at the mention of Quicksilver's sister. She hesitated for a moment. Is there any news on your sister or the other two people you and your team are looking for? Quicksilver slumped slightly and shook his head. I'm sorry, Rio, Quicksilver said glumly, looking out the window of the restaurant. My sister and Vision and this prince fellow are still lost somewhere in this galaxy, and we have no idea where they could be. Seeing his low mood, Chukai reached out and put her hand on his own, asking him to look at her. You will find them. You will find your sister. Chachi promised. I know you will. Quicksilver's mouth curled upwards, and he slowly turned his hand over so he could hold hers. Thanks, Chachi, Quicksilver said in a warm tone, squeezing her hand, which in turn made her face turn a darker shade of blue. They both sat there, just staring at each other*WOOWOOBOTH turned to see several civilian ships flying by, with light gunships and Coruscant frigates in pursuit. Following closely, Chukai's eyes narrowed. Those aren't Falcon and Spider-Man are in pursuit action. Rio looked back at Maximoff and saw the look on his face as his eyes locked on the two Avengers getting further and further away. She blinked, but it didn't take long for her to recognize the look on his face. She also knew that it was time for her to return to the Senate floor, as was about to happen during today's Senate session. Go on, Chukai said, letting him look at her. What? Chukai nodded in the direction of his two comrades. Obviously, we have to help them. Ah, you sure? I don't want to be rude, and I'm fine. Pietro, Mrs. Socko fidgeted in her seat, thinking for a moment, looking back between his date and the window. But I can handle small bills like this, Quicksilver, said Chachi. You, on the other hand, Quicksilver's face frowned. Are you sure? The raised eyebrow she gave him was all he needed. As much as he hated to go against the gentlemanly manners his father and Clint had taught him, right now, there were more pressing matters. I'll pay you back somehow, I promise. In a blur, Quicksilver ran off, leaving Chachi alone on the table. Soon after, she sighed. The senator was about to signal the waiter to come over so she could pay when she suddenly felt a puff of air caressing her face. Oh, I almost forgot something. Forgot she suddenly felt something pressing against her cheek. Turning around, Rio saw him walk away with a smile before disappearing again into the blur. When he left, the Pantalan senator still had the feeling on her cheek. Keeping her finger where it was, she realized what her date had just done, causing her face to flush a deep blue. Unconsciously, she began to smile. Chukai rubbed his cheeks, his heart trembling. After paying the bill, he stood up and left the store a few minutes later. Chapter 225 Controversy. A few hours later, heroism on Coruscant. The newscaster said, In a breathtaking display of action, the Avengers, now known as Quicksilver, Falcon, and Spider-Man, were seen today on the cityscape of Coruscant, assisting the planet's police and guards in apprehending a large group of marauding criminals who were seen harassing the people of Coruscant. Using their amazing skills and powers, the three Avengers quickly helped keep the planet safe and stop these violent criminals from further imposing their will on the innocent populace. This newscast is brought to you by Squidward. Fran, you boys must be busy, Natasha said, crossing her arms and looking expectantly at the headlines on the Coruscant Harlonet News. Currently, the 6 Avengers stood in the private room the GD had given them. These 2 did most of the work in my impression. Thumbs up to Falcon and Spider-Man. Well, at least you're being productive, Matt said, making caps snort in amusement. How long did it take you? Steve asked Sam, as his wingman made a perfunctory gesture. It was a bit of a chore to catch up to them, but once we did it didn't take long, Sam said. Then Pietro showed up, and it was a clean house in seconds. Glad to hear that. Steve nodded. What do you do? Asked Quicksilver. The expressions on Matt, Natasha, and Steve's faces were enough. Boy, return flight. Natasha began. So bad, isn't it? Sam said expectantly. Oh, you know, an assassination attempt on a major political figure. Robots attacking our transport, Natasha pointed out. Anything else? Peter asked. Durthorn is there. Ah, you serious? Natasha pulled her left sleeve up, but that was enough to reveal half of her scarred armor. That was a lucky blow. That didn't break my arm and body, Black Widow said with a wry smile, rolling up her sleeves. Got, Falcon muttered. Well, as we do for now, think about our GD allies and our newest friends who might be busy over the next few days, Matt said flatly, looking down at Natasha. Black Widow soon felt something small brushing against her leg. Looking down, she saw a young, baby-like Yoda looking up at her. It's still weird to see him sneak up on me. He does this to everyone, Quicksilver said. She picked up the child and carried him back to her room. As she did so, she did not notice that the child closed his eyes and placed his small hand on the bruised area of her left arm. What's wrong, little one? The baby simply grunted and tilted its head forward while its tiny clawed hands pressed themselves against her scarred arms. Hey. She was about to remove his hand, and a moment later, the bruise slowly disappeared, as if it had never formed in the first place. Black Widow marveled, quickly adjusting the child and carefully pulling up her sleeves as far as she could. She opened her eyes briefly and saw the bruise disappear. Natasha? Steve saw that she was holding the child motionless in her arms, and now the child seemed to be completely knocked out. What's wrong? It's gone. What? It's gone. What's missing? The Black Widow showed off her flawless skin, where bruises once were. The little guy, he put his hand on my arm and the bruises just went away. Well, that's something. Must be another one of those force abilities. Steve mused. I remember Peter and Rhodes saying that Beerus has the ability to use the force to help heal injuries and speed up the process. It's said to be a rare talent among GD Knights. She looked down and rubbed the sleeping green child's head. Thanks, little one. It had been a day since the Duchess of Mandalore arrived on Coruscant. The once sunny day was now dark, with thick clouds hanging overhead. One might have thought this was rather foreboding, as if something was stirring on the horizon. Inside the Senate building, a meeting was currently underway with many senators and representatives in attendance. The large circular room with the repulsor pods was filled with several thousand representatives from all corners of known galactic space. In the center of all these senators and representatives, the lone platform rose for the Supreme Chancellor to address thousands of politicians on the latest developments of the Mandalorian people. It pains me to say it, but Death Watch is now a significant lethal threat, Palpatine said as he brought it to the attention of the Senate. As soon as he finished his opening remarks, Sadin's repulsion pod floated up and approached the center. Mandalorian has made great progress in finding the leaders of this terrorist movement, Duchess Mandalore said. They are not powerful enough to destabilize our government. We will resolve this issue without conflict. If the Republic intervenes in our affairs, it will only lead to further violence. Therefore, I will reaffirm our neutrality. An idealist, said Mars Almeida, the Chagrian. No, these are the words of pacifists and those who choose non-violent action. That may be so, Duchess. However, this information was relayed to my staff just this morning, Palpatine said, motioning for his vice chairman to insert the disc into the console. I think you will find it most illuminating. A moment later, holographic images were projected onto every hover station in the conference room. Sadin recognized someone from her reaction point. The man spoke in a calm, but obviously concerned tone as the message was played before the Senate. The actions of our government have put us in a period of civil war. To admit that is to invite panic in the streets. When they reached Satin's platform, Padme said to her, Duchess, do you know this man? Yes, Deputy Minister Jarek. He is a good friend of mine, Satine said in an incredible tone. So we hid the truth from the people. Finally, this government knows this is not just a possibility. Not just a possibility. It's here. Shut up. Satine yelled, causing Amidst to pause the holographic message. Deputy Minister Jarek is an honorable man. He would never put a lie like that on record. The Mandalorian government holds no secrets from its people. If only that were the case, Palpatine said with a look of regret, asking his vice chairman to continue playing the message. The Death Watch is far more powerful than we once imagined. If we are to fight them effectively, we must receive the aid of the Republic. Instead, this government is acting out of pride by refusing the Jedi's help. This is not true. This is not true. Satine fought back fiercely with her fists, clenched in angry resistance. The Duchess of Sardinia will ultimately lead to our downfall. Make no mistake. The intervention of the Republic is absolutely necessary. As the message came to an end, Sardin looked directly at the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. This is not right. Something is wrong here. I want to talk to Jarek immediately. The Duchess muttered loudly. If that wasn't bad enough, what was said next made Sardinia's request for neutrality even more difficult. Sadly, Deputy Minister Jarek was killed this morning in the Death Watch explosion in Kalevala. Duchess felt her chest tighten at Palpatine's words, as her short breaths became quite difficult. No. It was the only word she could utter out of her extreme fear. Let us make sure his death was not in vain. Let us use our military might to defend the Mandalorians. Palpatine said. Sardin quickly shook off her fear and mustered up the courage to blurt out, defend? You mean occupy our home? You'll trample on our right to self-determination. We mean to save your people. You will turn our planet into a military target, which will bring war upon us. Mandalore must remain neutral. To some extent, I agree with our Reverend Duchess. The entire crowd of the Senate fell into a deathly silence as a new projection appeared before them. Projections of three men wearing the classic Mandalorian armor, known across the galaxy. Mando's trio all possessed a similar set of armor, but each had a unique design or set to stand out and distinguish one from the other. The man in the center had a small cape draped over his right shoulder and arm, and the symbol of the mythosaur dragon engraved on his chest armor. To his left was a man wearing standard armor, though his shoulders and gauntlets looked like they had been recently cleaned. The Mandalorian to the right of center had a more plain setup, but both of his shoulders supported separate curved tusks from the mythosaur skull. They faced a crowd of politicians, their helmets hiding their faces from everyone. Who is this? How did you get into our systems? Palpatine was obviously surprised by the intrusion. Ladies and gentlemen of the Republic, the middle Mandalorian said, his descending voice sounding very familiar to those who knew it. Yet, it was different at the same time. Hope you don't mind interrupting. I would like to introduce myself to you all as a true Mandalorian. A true follower and representative of our people. Not one of those crazy death cults, nor these weak fools who portray themselves as pacifists. Sardin's eyes widened, and many people in the Senate were mumbling to themselves. The clone troopers stationed in and around the many entrances to the Senate all began to look at each other in confusion. That voice. Impossible. For millennia, we Mandalorians have been followers of our ancient warrior traditions. These traditions have brought the Republic to its knees many times and are seen as the vanguard preventing certain destruction. We have been both an enemy and an ally of the Republic. That much is indisputable. The air around them grew tense and dangerous, and the senators could not deny that they felt it. And yet, he let out a roar that echoed off the walls. You would do well to remember who blew Mandalore to the dust it is today. We remember We sing the songs of the great destruction wrought upon our ancient homeworld by your wretched republic. You, Duchess, you have the audacity to call yourself a friend of the Republic. You spit on the ancient ways of our people. We are not men of men, but individuals who can rise from nothing and become leaders of our people. Our Mandalore. Silence reigned as the senators continued to watch the transmission. No. We, the true Mandalorians, will fight the Death Watch in due time. We will lead our people back to their former glory. But if you come to us, we will fight you back. Not even your clone-bred slaves, nor your Republic Jedi, can take us away. So, wait and see. The Mandalorian trio stood there for a moment, letting the information sink in, then blinked. As the transmission ended, an uproar broke out across the Senate. So many representatives called for the Mandalorian threat to be eliminated, just as many representatives did not want to be drawn into the conflict. Seeing the chaos around him, Palpatine didn't know whether to savor it or feel threatened by the new Mandalorian faction. Things had gone further than he had originally planned. All he could do now was to maintain his appearance and keep things moving forward. The voting will start in the next session. The order of the Supreme Speaker was issued amid the continuous clamor in the Senate. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.